I didn't plan to fall for a stranger, especially not one hiding under a city bench. But love doesn't wait for logic, it just happens. Have you ever done something completely irrational, but your heart told you it was right? Because that's exactly what I did. It was a cold night in Charlotte, and my shift at the hospital had just ended. My legs ached, my throat burned from calling codes, and my mind, well, it was somewhere between done and doneer. I wasn't thinking about anything but home, socks and sleep. But one wrong turn changed my entire life. I wasn't supposed to drive that route. The detour sign wasn't there the night before. I didn't even realize I'd passed the last working streetlight until I reached the edge of the old bus terminal downtown. That's when I saw him, curled under a rusty bench, soaked from head to toe, wrapped in what looked like a hoodie that had survived more than just rain. He wasn't moving. The rain pounded harder as my wipers squealed across the windshield. I slowed down, squinting through the downpour. The figure under the bench was too still. Something inside me shifted. A quiet pull. Not fear, not pity, just a sense that I couldn't ignore him. I pulled over. Headlights stayed on, cutting through the rain. I grabbed the umbrella from my back seat and stepped out. The air hit me like ice. My sneakers were soaked by the second step. "Hey," I said gently. "Are you okay?" No answer. I bent down. His face was pale, lips cracked, blue eyes opened slowly, barely focused but alert enough to clock my presence. "Don't call anyone," he whispered. I blinked. His voice was hoarse, barely above a breath. "You need help," I said, crouching closer. "You're freezing." "I don't need trouble," he muttered, trying to sit up. But he didn't have the strength. His hands trembled. "Come on," I said, not waiting for permission. I offered my arm. He hesitated. Then finally he leaned on me. He was light, too light for a man his size. It took 20 minutes to get home. I turned the heat all the way up, grabbed the blanket from the dryer, sat him down on my couch. He didn't speak for a while. He just sat, wrapped in the blanket, hands hovering near the space heater. I made soup, lentil from the freezer, heated in the microwave. Not exactly Michelin star hospitality, but it was hot and seasoned. He ate in slow spoonfuls. Every few minutes, his eyes would dart to the door, like he expected someone to barge in and drag him back to whatever corner of the world he'd escaped. "I'm Zaria," I said softly, settling on the edge of the coffee table. He looked up. A long pause. "Evan," he finally said. No last name, no story. Just Evan. That should have been the end of it. Just one night. Just soup and silence. Just two strangers sharing a quiet, wet evening in a city that forgets people like him exist. But the way he looked at me, it didn't feel like a stranger's gaze. Would you have helped him? Would you have let someone like Evan into your home without knowing who he was? Let me know in the comments. I need to know I wasn't the only one who did something crazy that night. Because what came after changed everything. And it all started right there. The clock on the microwave blinked 12:43 a.m. The rain hadn't let up outside, but in my apartment the only sounds were the hum of the heater and the soft clink of a spoon hitting ceramic. Evan hadn't spoken since giving his name, and I hadn't pushed. I just sat near the armrest of the couch while he finished the soup. He was slow, like each bite cost him energy. But I noticed he didn't leave a drop behind, not a smear of lentil or spice at the bottom of the bowl. That alone said more than words. "You want another blanket?" I asked. He shook his head without looking up. "This is fine." He didn't ask where he was, didn't ask why I brought him here. Just sat like someone who knew how to disappear in a room. I watched him out of the corner of my eye. There were layers to him, more than dirt or torn fabric. His fingernails were chipped but trimmed. His hoodie was frayed, but I spotted stitching that looked hand-done. His eyes, they scanned the room like he wasn't new to survival, but also not used to kindness. There was no TV on, no phone scrolling. I sat quietly across from him, in my faded grey armchair, one leg tucked under me, nursing a mug of peppermint tea. "You don't talk much," I said, keeping my tone light. Evan glanced up. "Not much to say. Try me." A pause. "Then where am I?" "Eastfield, small complex, near Monroe and 7th. He nodded, like he was mentally placing it on a map. "Do you usually bring people home from under benches?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "Only the interesting ones." His eyes flickered, but he didn't smile. He just stared at the steam rising from the empty bowl. "I won't stay long," he added. "I didn't ask for forever," I replied. But it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that holds two strangers carefully, not pushing them together, but not keeping them apart either. I stood and grabbed his bowl. "There's a shower if you want to feel human again." He didn't respond immediately, but a few minutes later, I heard the bathroom door close and the water turn on. I stood in the kitchen, drying the bowl slowly. Part of me wondered what I was doing, why I'd opened my door to a man I didn't know, why I felt safer with him here than I did alone. When he came out, steam followed. His hoodie was draped over one arm. His skin was pink from the heat. He wore one of my spare t-shirts, a navy blue one from my med school volunteering days, a bit tight across his chest, but he didn't seem to notice. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" He hesitated. "The shirt, the soup, the space." I shrugged. "Seemed like you needed it." He sat down again, slower this time, like his body had remembered pain it was trying to forget. "I used to live around here," he said suddenly, eyes locked on a photo, frame on my wall, one of me and Mela at a street festival downtown, near Uptown, sort of, but it was a long time ago. "Doesn't feel real anymore." I tilted my head. "You don't sound like someone who's always been out here." He looked at me now, finally really looked. "Yeah, well, that version of me is gone." "You sure?" He didn't answer, just leaned back, one arm resting across the back of the couch. "I'm not trying to fix you, Evan," I said quietly. His brows lifted. "Some people see someone struggling and think it's their job to patch them up," I continued. "But I don't see you as a project, just someone who needed a warm place for the night." He watched me. I couldn't read his face. Maybe he wasn't used to being seen like that. Eventually he said, "That's rare." It was nearly 2:30 a.m. now. I stood and handed him a second blanket. "I'll be in the next room. You need anything, knock. But please don't disappear without a word." "I won't." I turned toward my room. "Zaria," he called softly. I paused. "Thank you." I looked back. He wasn't crying, but he wasn't far from it. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The storm had passed, but something still stirred inside me. I didn't know who Evan really was. I didn't know where he came from or what he'd lost. But something in me trusted him, and that scared me more than the stranger under the bench ever did. The light from the hallway crept under my bedroom door. I couldn't sleep, no matter how many times I flipped my pillow or how tightly I wrapped the blanket around myself. My body was tired, but my mind wouldn't stop spinning. There was a stranger sleeping in my living room, a quiet, polite, homeless man with sharp eyes and quiet grief, a man who fixed my faucet, ate every spoon of soup like it was the best meal of his year, and sat like he was waiting for the world to ask him to leave again. I turned over and stared at the red numbers on my alarm clock. 3:02 a.m. What if he wasn't there in the morning? Would I be relieved or disappointed? I didn't have the answer. I got up and cracked the door open just a little. Evan was still on the couch. He was lying on his side, facing the window, one arm tucked under the pillow, the extra blanket half off his shoulder. He didn't stir. In that moment, he didn't look like a grown man, hardened by street life. He looked like a boy who hadn't been safe in a long time. I closed the door quietly. Back in bed, I finally drifted off, not into deep sleep, but into something softer, something like peace. When I opened my eyes again, the sun had broken through the blinds. It was almost 8. My off day. No shifts, no alarms, I pulled on a sweater and padded to the kitchen, expecting to hear water running or the kettle boiling. But it was silent. The couch was empty. No Evan. No sound. Just a folded hoodie on the armrest. My navy blue volunteer shirt was gone. So were the bowl and spoon from last night. I found them washed and drying on the rack. And on the counter beside the sink, a yellow post-it note. Thank you for reminding me I'm human. I'll find you again. E. That was it. No phone number. No last name. No goodbye. My chest tightened. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a goodbye. Maybe nothing. But not this. Clean break. Like it never happened. Like I was just a soft place for him to land for one night, before he vanished again into whatever darkness he came from. I didn't cry. I didn't have it in me. Instead, I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the note, trying to understand why a man I barely knew left a gap in my apartment bigger than his presence ever was. I cleaned. I opened windows. I changed the couch cover. I tried to press reset on everything, but every time I passed the armrest where he slept, my eyes found the crease in the blanket he folded. The same one I'd handed him without thought. The one he'd handled like it mattered. The day passed, and I didn't speak to anyone about him, not even Mela. She'd ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. I didn't know where he came from, or why he looked like he hadn't said his name in weeks. But I knew how he made me feel. Seen. Not because he tried, not because he said anything poetic or sweet, but because in those few hours, in that quiet space, he listened like my words carried weight. And he looked at me like my presence didn't just fill the room, it gave it meaning. I'd had boyfriends before, dates, a long-term ex who thought love meant managing me instead of cherishing me. That relationship ended with a packed bag and an overdue apology I never heard. But Evan didn't even ask for anything. He didn't take. He didn't expect. He just existed beside me. And now he was gone. That night, I walked down to the same bus stop. Not because I expected to see him, but because part of me needed proof he'd really been there. The bench was still wet from the day's drizzle. No signs of life. No footprints. Just Charlotte's broken bricks and silence. I stood there for a long while, ignoring the looks of a man waiting for the number 24 bus. He probably thought I was lost. Maybe I was. When I got home, I took the note and slid it into the back of my recipe book, between the lentil soup page and a recipe I hadn't made in over a year. I didn't want to see it every day, but I didn't want to throw it away either. Days turned into a week. Nothing happened. No messages, no calls. No strangers knocking, just silence. I stopped expecting him to return. I convinced myself it meant nothing. Just a night, just a moment, just two tired souls finding comfort where they could. But every time I walked past a man sitting alone on a corner, I looked twice. And every night, I caught myself glancing at the couch before turning off the lights. It's strange, isn't it? How a name as simple as Evan can start to mean something more, not because of what he said, but because of what he left behind. A question, a warmth, a memory. His name was Evan. Nothing more, nothing less. And somehow, that was enough to keep me awake for days after he disappeared. But life doesn't pause for people who vanish. It moves forward, even when your heart is still stuck somewhere between a folded blanket and a note that says, "I'll find you again." So I went back to work, back to patience, back to late-night cups of peppermint tea and early morning traffic reports. I smiled when I was supposed to, laughed when I had to. But some part of me had shifted, like I'd opened a door that couldn't be shut again, even if he never came back, even if I never saw him again. What scared me wasn't that I'd let him in. It was that I wanted to, and that, maybe, for the first time in years, I didn't regret it. Not one bit. Even now, when I think about that night, I still feel it. The rain, the quiet, the soup, and a stranger with blue eyes who whispered his name like it was the last piece of himself he hadn't let go of. Evan. A week had passed since he left. 7 full days, each one echoing with the same routine. Wake up, shower, dress, clock in, smile, nod, check vitals, update charts, and go home. The only unpredictable part was how long I'd stare at the couch after coming in. I didn't tell Mela. Not at first. She would have questions. And right now, I wasn't ready to admit that my silence wasn't just about protecting his privacy. It was about protecting my own heart. I told myself the story I thought I could live with. That it was one night. That I helped a man who needed it. That he left, and that was okay. But it wasn't. I'd never had an empty room feel so full. His presence clung to everything. The pillow on the left side of the couch. The folded towel I hadn't put away, the way the air in the apartment felt. Watched, but gently. I wasn't missing a man I knew. I was haunted by the stillness of someone I barely understood. That Saturday, Mela stopped by, unannounced, carrying a Tupperware of her. Spicy shrimp gumbo, and an attitude that said she smelled something off. I opened the door wearing a sleep shirt and socks that didn't match. "Girl, did you forget how to answer a text?" she asked, walking past me like she owned the place. "Sorry. Work's been busy." She raised an eyebrow. "You say that every time you're avoiding something." I didn't answer. I just took the gumbo and placed it on the counter. She leaned on the fridge. "You look distracted. And your couch looks like somebody's been folding blankets too neatly." I paused. She caught it. "Oh," she said, slowly. "Now I know I'm not crazy. You let somebody sleep on that couch." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is." I hesitated. Mela was family. She helped raise me after Mom passed. But she was also the type to fire off emotional grenades before asking questions. "He was just someone I helped," I said. "It was raining. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. So I brought him home." She stared at me. "You brought a man off the street into your apartment?" "I know how it sounds." "You're damn right it sounds crazy." It didn't feel crazy. Mela fell silent. Her expression softened. "What was his name?" she asked. "Evan. No last name?" "Nope." She folded her arms now, mirroring me. "You slept with him?" I didn't reply. "You did," she said. Not angry, just stunned. "Zaria." "It wasn't planned. It wasn't reckless," I said, voice low. "It just happened." Mela looked away, sighed hard, and sat at the table. "You're not stupid," she said. "You've always had this heart that reaches for people who look like they've stopped believing in themselves." I sat across from her. He didn't take anything from me. He didn't even ask for anything. He just needed rest. And I needed someone to talk to who wasn't pretending to be okay. She studied me. "What happened?" "He left, before sunrise. Didn't steal, didn't lie, just disappeared." "Did he leave a note?" I got up, walked over to the bookshelf, and pulled out the yellow post-it from my recipe book. I handed it to her. She read it aloud. "Thank you for reminding me I'm human. I'll find you again." She set it down. "Well, damn," she muttered. "That's either the start of a love story or the first chapter in your true crime documentary." I laughed for the first time in days. It broke something inside me. "I don't know why it's bothering me so much," I admitted. "I barely knew him." "Zaria," Mela said, softly now. "You let someone see you, all the way. No armor, no nurse uniform, no curated Zaria. Just you." My eyes stung. "And that version of you was enough for him," she said. "That doesn't happen every day." We sat there, the weight of her words hanging in the room. "Do you want to find him?" she asked. "I don't even know how." "Well," she said, standing up and grabbing her bag, "if he meant it, he'll find you. And if he doesn't, then he wasn't meant to stay." She walked to the door, paused, and added, "Just promise me if a man shows up on your couch again, he comes with references. I'll ask for a resume next time." Mela smirked. "Good, because you're too soft to let this become a pattern." After she left, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It felt more like space, room to breathe, room to hope, or maybe room to accept that even if nothing ever happened again, I had done something good. And maybe that was enough, for now. But deep down, I still wished I knew where he went, and whether I'd ever get the chance to ask him who he really was, because something about the way he looked at me that night didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning of something I hadn't yet named, something I wasn't ready to let go of. Not yet. I used to think silence was peaceful. That quiet meant healing. Now, I wasn't so sure. It had been nearly 2 weeks since Evan left, but it didn't feel like he was gone. It felt like he was just missing, like I could turn a corner or walk into the grocery store and find him crouched in the cereal aisle, holding a box like it held all the answers he'd been looking for. He was a ghost I couldn't forget, not because he hurt me, but because he didn't. He didn't lie. He didn't manipulate. He didn't try to take anything. That's what made it harder. He was kind without trying, gentle without warning. And when he left, he didn't shatter my world. He left it gently tilted, like furniture you didn't realize had been moved until you bumped into it in the dark. I still had the post-it, still tucked behind my recipe book, still untouched. I hadn't told anyone else about him, not the nurses I worked with, not my neighbor downstairs who liked to gossip about everything from grocery prices to lost cats. This one felt like mine. And the truth was, he didn't just sleep on my couch. He stayed in my bones. In the way I paused at the sound of footsteps in the hallway. In the moments, I caught myself cooking more than one serving by habit. In the shift of my eyes, every time a tall, lean figure passed me on the street. He was everywhere and nowhere. One Monday morning, I took the long route to the hospital. The bus passed the same intersection where I'd first found him, half asleep and soaked under that metal bench. I caught myself pressing my hand to the window, as if seeing the empty space would confirm he wasn't coming back. That bench had no memory of him, but I did. I remembered the way his fingers wrapped around the bowl, the way he'd said, "He doesn't lie," when I asked about Baldwin, the way he kissed me like it was the only honest thing he'd done in a long time. That kiss haunted me more than the night itself, not because it was desperate, but because it was tender, and because I gave it willingly. There were nights I asked myself if I made a mistake, letting a stranger in, letting him close, but I couldn't find the shame in what I did, only the absence of what could have been. At work, I stayed busy. That day, I assisted Dr. Morgan with a post-op recovery. Mrs. Eaton, a regular diabetic patient, complimented my hair and told me I looked like I was thinking about someone sweet. I forced a smile and said, "Maybe I am," but I didn't offer more. After lunch, I sat in the nurse's lounge, sipping a warm ginger tea and scrolling mindlessly through my phone. Social media offered nothing but noise. The same faces with filters, the same trending videos, the same arguments in comment sections that meant nothing. I opened the news app instead, looking for distraction. A photo caught my eye. Not the headline, not at first. It was the jawline, the eyes, that slight furrow in the brow. I froze. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I read the headline. Evander returns. Billionaire heir found after years in hiding. Everything around me went still. I clicked the article. A formal portrait of him, clean-shaven, suited, standing with an older woman, who looked like she hadn't smiled in years, filled the top of the screen. The article went on about legacy, Reed enterprises, boardroom battles, legal conflicts over presumed death, and estate transitions. But I didn't care about the billions. I cared about the man in the photo, the one who slept on my couch, the one who kissed me and thanked me for reminding him he was human, the one who never said he came from money, never hinted at a last name, never used words like legacy or empire or inheritance. He was Evan to me, not Evander Reed. And suddenly, I felt sick, not because he was rich, but because he didn't trust me enough to tell me. Or maybe he didn't think he deserved to. I closed the article, locked my phone, stared into the wall. He wasn't just someone passing through. He was someone running from something bigger than I realized. And he used my home, my heart, as shelter from a storm I didn't even know existed. That night, I didn't eat. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off, just the dim glow from the stove clock keeping me company. Part of me was angry. The other part? Still aching. Not because he lied, but because he didn't give me the chance to decide if I could handle the truth. I deserved that. One name, one sentence, one piece of him before he disappeared again. Instead, I got a note, a quiet promise written in 5 words, "I'll find you again." But now I knew why that promise felt unfinished. Because he wasn't just Evan. He was Evander Reed, heir to the same towers that stood over this city. The man behind the name engraved in every real estate sign uptown. The man who could have had anyone, but hid himself under a bench until I found him. And I was just the woman who fed him soup, let him into her home, and didn't ask for anything in return. Now I knew the truth, and I didn't know what to do with it, not yet. But I knew one thing for sure. He wasn't just missing anymore. He had been found, by the world, by his legacy, by the headlines, but not by me. And I wasn't sure he ever intended for me to find out. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, the article burned into my memory, not the words, but the photo. The way he stood beside the woman I now knew was his stepmother, posture stiff, smile forced. He looked like a stranger wearing Evan's face. But I knew those eyes. And I knew that wasn't the same man who sat on my couch, slouched in a too-thin hoodie, eating soup like it was salvation. That wasn't the man who fixed my sink, or quoted Baldwin, or kissed me with his whole chest trembling. I turned the phone face down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling for hours. The shadows on my walls shifted like they were trying to spell something I couldn't read. How was this real? How did I let someone so layered slip in and out of my life without asking a single important question? Because I believed what I saw, not the clothes, not the silence, but the pain in his voice, the hunger in his hands, the exhaustion in his bones. That man wasn't pretending. He was hiding, not from me, but from the world that turned him into Evander Reed instead of someone who could just be. I got up around 5. Didn't bother with breakfast. I wasn't hungry. My body moved, but my mind was crowded. Every step, every movement felt delayed, like I was walking underwater. When I walked into the hospital lounge for shift change, I nodded at my co-workers like nothing was different. I didn't tell them I'd spent the night staring at a screen, tracing the image of a man I'd only known as Evan. I didn't tell them I had a post-it note in my purse that now felt like a piece of fiction. I didn't tell them the man I let into my home wasn't just lost. He was one of the richest men in the city. I wore my silence like armor. After rounds, I slipped into the break room and opened my phone again. I searched his name. The internet had exploded. There were videos, tweets, hot takes from business analysts and armchair psychologists. Some were praising his return. The prodigal heir is back, stronger than ever. Others weren't so kind. Evander Reed faked his breakdown for PR. There was even a blog headline, "From Homeless to Billionaire." The rebranding of a Reed. I clicked on none of them. I didn't need noise. I already knew the truth, or at least my part of it. Evan wasn't rebranding. He wasn't strategizing. He was surviving. And maybe I was the only person who knew that version of him. The one who didn't need a title or a press release or a power move. The one who slept on my couch because he had nowhere else to go. The one who didn't ask for anything, but left everything behind. I didn't care about his empire. I cared about the man who told me, "You ever feel invisible until someone sees you?" That wasn't something a billionaire says to impress a nurse. That was something a human being says when they're unraveling. I leaned back in the chair, closed my eyes and whispered, "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" Not with anger, with sadness. Because I would have listened, I would have understood, I would have stayed. Later that night, I went home and stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom. I studied my own face, the lines under my eyes, the way my lips pressed together like they were afraid to speak, the slope of my shoulders after days of trying to carry too much. I didn't look broken, but I didn't look okay either. I walked into the kitchen, opened my recipe book, and pulled out the post-it again. 5 words. Thank you for reminding me I'm human. It hurt now, not because I doubted it, but because I knew how much it must have cost him to write that. Because if the world saw him as a brand, as a product, as an empire, then what did it mean that he chose to be nothing in front of me? Just Evan. No suits, no chauffeurs, no name tags. Just a hoodie and a need to feel alive again. I sat on the edge of the couch, the exact spot where he'd once curled into sleep, and stared at the front door, wondering if I'd hear a knock, wondering if he ever meant to come back, wondering if he knew I had found out the truth, and if that was the reason he stayed gone. Mela called around 9. You still not talking about him? I didn't bother pretending. I saw him. On the news. Figured. Whole city's buzzing. He's not who I thought he was. There was a pause. Or maybe, he's both. I leaned my head back against the wall. What am I supposed to do with this? You don't have to do anything. I let him in. You did. I believed in who he showed me. And maybe that version of him was the most honest he's ever been. That stopped me. Because I realized something. Evan didn't lie to me. He didn't say, I'm poor. He didn't say, I have nothing. He didn't say, you can trust me. He just said his name, and showed up with whatever pieces he had left. He didn't trick me. He protected something. Maybe himself. Maybe me. Maybe both. I hung up with Mela after a few more quiet words and walked out onto the apartment balcony. The night was cool, but still. The kind of night that waits for someone to say something brave. I whispered into the air, you didn't have to be rich for me to care. And I meant it. I wasn't in love with a name. I was moved by a moment. By a night that was quiet and soft and full of honesty no title could ever replace. And maybe that's why it hurt. Because now that I knew who he was, I also knew I might never see that version of him again. The Evan I knew. He was real. But headlines don't tell that kind of story. Only life does. And life? It had already started writing a new chapter, one I wasn't sure I'd be a part of. But deep down, I hoped I still might be, even if I didn't know how, even if he had already returned to a world I'd never belong in. It was a Thursday, bright, dry and ordinary, the kind of day you don't expect anything life-changing to happen. The hospital clinic had been quiet for most of the afternoon. Flu season hadn't kicked in yet, and we were between major intakes. I'd just finished refilling a patient's chart when I stepped outside to get some air. That's when I saw him. He was standing across the street. Still like he wasn't sure if he belonged to this moment or the one he'd walked away from. A long black coat, dark slacks, brown boots, nothing flashy, no attention-seeking shine. But still, everything about him looked tailored, intentional, collected, except his face. His face looked like someone waiting to be forgiven, not sure if he had the right to ask. My heart stopped. It was him, not a picture, not a headline, not a hallucination from a sleepless night. Evander. But it wasn't the man I'd known. The Evan who sat on my couch had worn shadows. This man wore Polish, but the eyes were the same. Blue, deep, troubled. I didn't move at first. I wasn't even sure I'd breathe again. The seconds stretched between us like tightrope wires. One step, and everything might collapse. He crossed the street slowly, like someone approaching a door they weren't sure would open. Zaria, he said. Just my name. No explanation, no pretense. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. I could have said a dozen things. Why didn't you call? Why now? What do you want? But none of them made it past my lips. So, I asked the only thing that felt real. Why are you here? He looked down, like even that question required permission to answer. I owed you more than a note. His voice was softer than I remembered. Not because he was weaker, but because he was being careful. Like I was made of glass. I wasn't. I was made of bruises. I folded my arms. You owed me the truth. I didn't know how to give it. You gave it to the press. He winced. Not dramatically, just visibly. I didn't plan that, he said. I didn't even want to be found. So you let the world rediscover you, but not me? He took a breath, hands slipping into the pockets of his coat. Zarya, I didn't leave because I didn't care, he said. I left because I didn't know who I was anymore. That night, his voice caught, but he steadied it. That night gave me something I hadn't felt in years. I didn't blink. I didn't lie to you. I just didn't tell you the rest. That's not honesty, I said, quiet but sharp. That's convenience. He nodded slowly. I know. We stood in silence. Pedestrians walked by, none of them knowing what was happening. A woman facing the man who had walked in and out of her life like a ghost who'd borrowed a human face. I didn't expect to see you like this, I said. I didn't expect to see you at all, he replied. But I wanted to. Because you felt guilty? No, he said. Because I couldn't stop thinking about you. I exhaled slowly. Part of me wanted to believe him. The other part wanted to throw his words back like stones. But instead, I looked him in the eye and asked the one question that had been echoing since the day I saw that headline. Who are you, really? He smiled then, not with his mouth, but with his eyes. Soft, honest, sad. That's what I came here to figure out, he said. I blinked, once, then twice. He took that as a crack in the door. Come to dinner with me. My arms dropped. Dinner? He nodded. Meet my family. Let them see what changed me. I frowned. You want to parade me in front of the same people who probably think I picked you up for a payday? His lips pressed into a thin line. They don't matter, but what you gave me does. I stepped back. Just a little. Enough for air. Evander, you can still call me Evan, he said. I liked how it sounded when you said it. I hated how that got to me. He still knew how to say the right thing at the wrong time. I glanced behind me. My shift was still on. I had 10 minutes left on break. You waited outside my job to invite me to dinner? I didn't want to show up at your door. I didn't know if I still had the right. You don't. He nodded again. That's fair. But I might still come. He looked up at me, hope flickering in the corner of his eye. Might? I didn't say yes, I added. Didn't say no either. I hated that he noticed that. I hated even more that I noticed his smile was smaller now, more contained, like a man who didn't want to get used to joy just in case it disappeared again. I stepped closer. If I come, I'm not dressing up. He grinned. Wouldn't expect you to. I'm not pretending to be anything. Wouldn't ask you to. And if one of them says something sideways, I won't stay quiet. He laughed. Please don't. I stared at him for another second. Pick me up Friday, 6 sharp. He nodded, then paused. Can I? No, I said. No hugs, no promises, no explanations. Not yet. He stepped back. Friday, 6, he repeated. I turned and walked back toward the building. I didn't look back, because I knew he was still watching, and because I didn't want him to see the tear I'd blinked away. Friday came fast, too fast. The moment I told him yes, or not no, the week shifted. Work moved slower. Conversations blurred. Every passing day felt like a countdown I couldn't stop. I didn't tell Mela right away, not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't want to hear it, the logic, the warnings, the questions I already couldn't answer. It wasn't until Friday morning, while I was standing in front of my closet holding the same black dress I wore to church 3 months ago, that she called. You sound distracted, she said, skipping her usual good morning. I'm not distracted, I replied, biting my lip. She snorted. So, what's his name? I closed my eyes. Evander. A pause. Sharp. The billionaire. The same. I heard the creak of her chair, followed by a dramatic sigh. Girl, what did I tell you about inviting chaos into your life? You also told me to forgive people when they show up with honesty. And did he? Yes, in his own way. She didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice had softened. You seeing him again? I sat on the bed, the dress still in my hands. He invited me to dinner. With his family. Another pause. You going? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yeah. Zaria. I know. Do you? No, I whispered. But I have to go. Not for him. For me. The silence stretched, and for once she didn't argue. Instead, she said, then go. But wear something that reminds you who you are. Don't go in there trying to blend. Go in there making them remember. I smiled. You sound like you're sending me to war. I am. I didn't wear the black dress. I wore burgundy, a simple sleeveless midi with a high neckline, soft at the waist, paired with flats, gold hoops, and my curls tied up in a high puff. No fake lashes, no glitter. Just me. Honest, clean, present. When he pulled up at 6:01 p.m. in a black SUV, I was already waiting outside. He stepped out, opened the passenger door without a word. This time, he didn't look like the Evan I knew, or even the one who stood outside the clinic. He looked like a man walking into territory he'd rather avoid, but had to. We drove mostly in silence. I glanced at him once. His jaw was tight. One hand on the wheel, the other clenched gently on his lap. You nervous? I asked. He looked over at me and gave a faint laugh. Terrified. I liked that. Not because I wanted him to be afraid, but because I wanted to know this meant something. To him too. The Reed estate sat in the gated hills just outside the city. No guards at the gate, just cameras. The kind that zoom in without moving. The kind that watched you silently, waiting to be triggered. The house was expected, huge, pristine, not a crack or leaf out of place. It looked like something that belonged in a magazine labeled Luxury Lifestyle, the untouchable class. He opened the door for me again. Inside smelled like roses and money. A woman in pearls and silk greeted us with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Evander, she said coolly, so glad you finally came home. He kissed her cheek. Callista, then turned to me. This is Zaria. She extended her hand, wrist stiff. Zaria, a pleasure. I shook it gently. Thank you for having me. Of course, she said. We love to meet Evander's friends. There was a weight behind that pause, like she didn't want to say guests, but couldn't stomach girlfriend. I didn't let it show. I smiled. Well, I'm here. Let's eat. Her mouth twitched, not quite a frown, not quite a grin. Dinner was in a private room with tall windows, dim lights, and a table long enough to seat a basketball team. It was only set for 6. Evander and I, Callista, a grey-haired man who looked like he ran 5 companies before breakfast, a woman who introduced herself as Callista's sister, Evelyn, and a young guy I assumed was an intern or something, someone taking notes even during the appetizer. We were offered sparkling water or wine. I chose water. Evander stuck with me. The conversation started with real estate. Evander's return to the board, pending legal clarifications, expansion opportunities. They barely looked at me. Until Evelyn turned. So, Zaria, she said, dabbing her mouth with a napkin. What do you do? I'm a nurse. How lovely, she said, with a tone that meant how quaint. We've donated millions to healthcare programs. I know, I said. I've seen the plaques. But hospitals are still underfunded, especially in neighborhoods like Eastfield. Callista's glass paused mid-air. That's where you're based. Yes, dangerous area, Evelyn added, as if I worked in a war zone. It's a community, I replied, with people who deserve care, just like anyone else. Evander placed his fork down. His eyes met mine briefly, a flicker of pride. Callista cleared her throat. We've long supported outreach programs. I nodded. Then I'm sure you understand the value of showing up, not just signing checks. The table went quiet for a beat too long. I took another sip of my water. Evander reached under the table, his hand brushing mine. Subtle, grounding. I didn't hold it, but I didn't pull away either. Dessert came, some caramel tart with a French name I didn't bother remembering. And then it happened, the question that made me push back from the table. "So, how did you two meet?" asked the younger man, no older than 24, with a smooth face and eager eyes. Before I could answer, Evelyn added, "Let me guess, before or after the will announcement?" I stood up, fork down, napkin folded. Evander started to rise too, but I touched his shoulder and said calmly, "No, stay." I looked directly at Callista. "I appreciate the meal, but I'm not here to prove anything. I don't need a chair at this table to feel like I matter." Her mouth parted, slightly caught off guard. "I'm not dessert," I said, "and I'm done." Evander stood now too. "I'll walk you out," he said, voice tight. "No need," I replied, already moving toward the door. As I walked out, I could feel the air shift. Like my presence had cracked a window they kept tightly sealed. Good. Let them feel a breeze for once. Because I wasn't a moment in Evan's life. I was a choice. And whether he made it or not, I'd already made mine. The ride home was silent. Not tense, not angry. Just hollow, like a conversation that never got spoken, sitting between us in the car, breathing heavier than either of us did. Evander drove slowly, carefully, like he was afraid one wrong turn would shatter the already fragile space between us. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. I could feel every word he wasn't saying. His fingers tapped the steering wheel occasionally, rhythmically, like he was counting seconds he couldn't control. I kept my arms folded, face turned toward the window, watching Charlotte. His skyline blur past like it wasn't part of my world anymore. He cleared his throat once. Then stopped. I said nothing. When we hit a red light, he finally spoke. "They didn't know what to do with you." I turned slowly. That was the point, wasn't it? He gave a soft exhale, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. "They're used to people who fit their mold," he said. "Polished, predictable. People who smile through insult and thank them for the privilege." I looked back out the window. "Then you brought the wrong woman." "No," he said quickly. "I brought the only one who sees me, who saw me when I didn't even know how to see myself." His voice cracked a little on that last part. I stayed silent, not because I didn't feel it, but because I didn't trust what I felt yet. He turned onto my street. The SUV hummed softly as we rolled to a stop in front of my building. He didn't reach to unlock the doors. He just sat there. "You said you'd find me again," I said, my voice low. "But it feels like you brought me to your world just to watch me walk out of it. I didn't expect them to act like that. Did you expect me to be okay with it?" "No," he admitted, "but I hoped you'd see through it." I turned to him, finally met his eyes. I did. A pause. "I saw through all of it, Evander. The polite digs, the forced smiles, the look Callista gave me like I was a passing moment." I shook my head. "I'm not here for that. I'm not here to fight for a seat at a table I didn't ask to be part of. I didn't bring you to fight. Then what did you bring me for?" His jaw tightened. "To show them who I became," he said. "Because of you." The words hung between us like a thread stretched too tight. "I don't need their validation," he continued. "But I needed them to know that I'm not the version of me they created." I looked at him closely. His expression was bare, vulnerable, like the man who ate soup in my apartment had resurfaced, hidden behind tailored suits and media headlines. "You're not them," I said. "But you're not who I knew either." That made him flinch. "Which one are you trying to be?" "I don't know yet," he admitted. "I'm still figuring that out." I appreciated the honesty. I hated how much I appreciated it. I reached for the door handle. "Thank you for dinner," I said. "Zarya." "I don't regret coming," I added. "I needed to see it. Needed to see what I'm not walking into. I didn't bring you to walk away." I looked at him. Calm. Grounded. I know. But sometimes, walking away is the clearest way to protect what you gave someone. He didn't speak. I opened the door. cold air rushed in. I stepped out, then turned back and said, "You don't have to choose who to be for them, Evander. But you do have to choose who you're going to be when no one else is looking." His grip tightened on the wheel. "Good night," I said, then shut the door. I didn't turn around as he pulled off. I didn't watch him leave. Because some moments aren't about drama or declarations. Some moments are quiet, unfinished, and still full of truth. Back in my apartment, I kicked off my flats and let my hair down. My heels of the night were my backbone, and now that I was home, I let them drop, along with everything I'd been holding in since I stepped into that mansion. The truth was, I didn't feel small at that table. I felt too large for the room, too honest, too direct, too whole. And that scared them, because I didn't want their approval. I didn't want their name. I wanted Evan, not Evander, the man who shared tea and silence, the man who said, "You made me feel human again," not the man who introduced me to a world where people assumed kindness had a motive. I walked over to the couch, sat on the same spot where he'd once curled into sleep, same blanket still folded neatly in the basket beside it, same shelf with Baldwin's worn copy resting untouched. I leaned back and whispered to no one. Maybe some men live between two names because one of them is a mask and the other one scares them. And maybe I'd seen both, the man without the money and the man carrying the weight of it. I hadn't rejected either. But now, I had to choose for myself. Who was Zaria Lane when no one else was looking? Still kind, still whole, and still unwilling to let anyone else define her worth, even if that man said all the right things. Even if that man still had a part of her heart. Mela didn't knock. She never did. She walked straight in Saturday morning, holding a paper bag of hot biscuits, her sunglasses pushed up on her head, and that look on her face, the one that always came before a truth she had no intention of sugarcoating. "You went," she said, setting the bag on my counter like it owed her money. "To the dinner." I raised an eyebrow. "You checked the security cameras at the gate?" She gave me a dry stare. "Girl, please. I've got two eyes, a phone, and a cousin who forgets I can read her silences." I poured coffee. Didn't speak. I already knew she wasn't here for small talk. She walked over to the couch, sat down, and patted the seat next to her. I stayed in the kitchen, mug in hand. "Was it bad?" she asked. "It was necessary." That sounds like code for, I wanted to slap somebody but kept it classy. I gave her a look, and she chuckled. "I knew it," she said. "Let me guess. Rich women with smiles that could cut glass, whispering questions like you were there to clean their jewelry?" "Close." She leaned back. "What did you wear?" "Burgundy." Mela grinned. "Good choice. That's your power color." I took a slow sip and said nothing. She watched me for a beat, then her tone softened. "How did you feel when you walked out?" "Lighter," I answered. "Not because it went well, but because I didn't shrink." Mela nodded. "That's my girl." I finally walked over and sat beside her. We ate in silence for a moment. The smell of butter and cinnamon filled the space, but my appetite was quiet. Mela leaned her elbow on the backrest and turned toward me. "You still want him?" The question hit harder than I expected. Want? I didn't know what I wanted anymore. "I don't know," I admitted. "I want the version of him that sat on my couch, the man who didn't have to prove anything, who didn't wear a name like a suit of armor." "And what about the other version?" she asked. "The one with a last name that owns buildings and walks into rooms people like us usually get asked to wait outside of?" I shrugged. "He says he doesn't want that version, that he's figuring himself out. But he still brought me to that world," I said, knowing how they'd look at me, knowing how it'd feel to stand in a room where love is a currency and power is the language. Mela tilted her head. "You think he did it to impress you?" "No, I think he did it to impress himself." She nodded slowly. "And you don't want to be someone's mirror while they figure out who they're trying to become?" I looked at her. "Exactly." She leaned forward. "Zaria, listen to me. That man saw something in you no one else had, probably not even himself. That's not small. That's not forgettable, I know. But if he wants you in his life, he has to protect your peace, not put you in rooms that test it. Those words settled deep in my chest, because I realized then I hadn't left that mansion because I was offended. I left because I felt myself disappearing in a room full of people who didn't care if I stayed. I didn't want to become small just to be close to someone I cared about. Mela nudged my leg with hers. I don't think you're done with him. I'm not, I said, but I'm not chasing him either. She smiled wide. Good. Let that man chase peace the way you gave it to him that night. I leaned my head on her shoulder. You always this wise. Only on Saturdays, after carbs. We both laughed. The kind of laugh that feels like air being let out of a room that was holding its breath too long. Later that day, I sat by the window in my room, staring out at the street. A breeze rustled the leaves on the trees, and a kid rode by on a bike too big for his frame. It was peaceful, still, and in that stillness, I finally admitted something to myself. I missed Evan, not because he was rich, not because of how he looked in a coat or the way he smelled when he got out of my shower that night, but because he made me feel needed without being used. He asked nothing from me except honesty, and gave me the same, until he didn't, until silence replaced his presence, until dinner became a test I didn't ask for. But even in all that, he still mattered, and I didn't know how to erase that, or if I even should. I picked up my phone, stared at the screen. His name wasn't saved. I never got his number. He never asked for mine. It was as if we had agreed, silently, to exist in a space that didn't follow rules. That didn't require contact lists or schedules, but that space was gone now, replaced with headlines, estates, family names. Still, some part of me hoped he'd come back, not as Evander Reed, but as Evan, the man who said nothing, but made me feel everything. Absence has a weight no one talks about. It doesn't sit on your shoulders like guilt. It doesn't squeeze your chest like grief. It just lingers, quiet, constant, pressing itself into your daily routine until you forget what lightness used to feel like. Evan's absence wasn't loud. It didn't arrive in grand waves or aching sobs. It came in glances, in the way I checked my phone at odd hours, knowing I never had his number to begin with, in the way I paused when someone knocked, thinking, just for a second, it could be him. But it never was, and I kept telling myself it didn't matter. I'd already done what I needed to do. I'd shown up. I'd spoken my truth. I'd walked out when I refused to be minimized. That was power. That was clarity. So, why did I still wake up thinking about the way he looked at me the night I gave him soup? Why did I still dream of the quiet between us, that safe kind of silence people search their whole lives for? At the clinic, everything looked the same, but I didn't feel the same. I smiled for patients. I laughed with co-workers. I wrote my notes and returned calls. But inside, I was somewhere else, hovering in the space between what was and what could have been. Even when I spoke, I was holding something back. I wasn't sad, not fully. I was changed. It's the kind of change that doesn't announce itself. You only notice it when you try to be who you were before and realize she doesn't fit in your skin anymore. Mela noticed it too. She'd stopped asking about Evan every time we spoke, but I could see it in her eyes. The curiosity, the quiet concern. You okay? She asked over lunch one afternoon. Yeah, I said too quickly. She nodded slowly. Okay. Then she passed me the hot sauce and let me sit in my silence. That's what I loved about her. She never pushed. She waited, because she knew I'd talk when I was ready. One night, I took a walk. No destination, just sneakers and soft music playing in one earbud. The breeze was crisp, the kind that hinted fall was coming soon. As I strolled past the library, I saw a man bent over on the corner, sitting on a crate. He wasn't Evan, not even close. But I froze anyway, because for a split second, I thought it was him. I stood there, heart racing, watching this stranger unwrap a sandwich from a brown paper bag. And I realized I'd never asked Evan if he was hungry when I found him. I just assumed he was. I assumed so much, that he was poor, that he was lost, that he had nothing. And maybe some of that was true, but maybe some of it was projection too, because I've always wanted to be needed, quietly, gently, and that night he needed me in a way no one else ever had. I hadn't given him charity, I'd given him comfort, and now I was craving the same thing from a man who didn't even know how to give it back, or maybe didn't think he was allowed to. When I got home, I sat on the floor beside my bookshelf. The post-it was still there, still tucked behind that same lentil soup recipe. I hadn't moved it. I hadn't touched it in days, weeks. But that night, I pulled it out and read it again. Thank you for reminding me I'm human. I'll find you again. 5 simple sentences, still as powerful as the first time I read them. But now they felt unfinished. Because being found isn't a one-time thing. You can find someone once and still lose them again if neither of you knows how to stay. I wasn't angry at Evan anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was suspended, waiting without waiting, hoping without hoping, because I didn't need him to complete me. But I needed to know if he could meet me where I stood, not as a man who returned to a billion-dollar empire, not as the son of Callista Reed, but as Evan, the man who once said nothing and still made me feel seen. I went to bed that night with the windows cracked open, letting the air in, letting the thoughts out. I didn't check the news, didn't search his name, didn't wonder what mansion he was in or what headline he was making. I just whispered, "If you meant it, you'll come." And then I fell asleep to the sound of the wind slipping through my curtains. Because sometimes waiting isn't weakness. Sometimes it's knowing what you're worth, and knowing that if someone truly values you, they'll find their way back. Not with noise, but with intention. The knock came just after 7 on Sunday evening. 3 soft taps. Nothing loud, nothing urgent. The kind of knock that says, "I'm not sure I'm welcome, but I had to try." I froze mid-step in the hallway, towel in hand from wiping down the kitchen counter. It wasn't Mela. She never knocked. It wasn't a neighbor. They usually texted. For a moment, I just stood there, heart thudding. Then, slowly, I walked to the door. No peeking through the peephole. Somehow, I already knew. I opened it. And there he was. Evan. No coat, no SUV waiting behind him, no watch, no presence of privilege, just a simple charcoal hoodie, jeans, and the same blue eyes that had once looked at me like I was the only still thing in his chaotic world. "I wasn't sure you'd answer," he said. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. He shifted on his feet. "I'm not here to fix what I broke," he said. "I'm here to be honest about why I broke it in the first place." Still, I didn't move, but I also didn't close the door. That was enough for him to continue. "I left because I didn't want you to meet the version of me I was trying to run from. I stayed away because I didn't think I deserved another chance to show you who I'm trying to become." He paused. "I let that dinner happen the way it did because I thought bringing you into my world would explain everything. But all it did was remind me how much I hate the parts of myself that still feel attached to it." My throat tightened, and I realized, he continued, that I didn't need to bring you to my world. I needed to meet you where I left you. I stepped aside, not with a smile, not with words, just enough space to let him in. He entered slowly, eyes scanning the apartment like it was a memory he wasn't sure was real. The couch, the bookshelf, the place where he'd once sat, shivering, clutching a bowl of lentil soup. He stood in the middle of the room, unsure of whether to sit or speak again. I walked past him, placed the towel back on the counter, and said, "If you're here, say what you came to say." He nodded once. "I miss the silence we shared," he said. "The way you didn't fill the space with questions or pity. The way you let me be, without asking me to explain every broken piece." I leaned against the kitchen counter. "I wasn't trying to be your safe house," I said. "I just wanted to be real." "I know." He stepped closer, but not too close. I spent so many years being who everyone needed me to be. Evander the heir, Evander the businessman, Evander the crisis. I didn't know who Evan was until you made space for him. My eyes met his. You still don't know who that is? He nodded. No. But I know he's the only one I want to be when I'm around you. I felt my chest expand, not with pride, but with something heavier. Truth. What do you want from me? I asked. Another night? A few more borrowed days before the next headline pulls you back? No, he said immediately. I'm not here for a night. I'm here for the kind of time that doesn't come with conditions. I studied him. He looked tired, but not the same kind of tired he'd worn the night I found him. This wasn't physical exhaustion. This was a man stripped of illusion, choosing vulnerability without a script. And I had to decide if I was ready to trust that. I'm not asking you to erase what happened, he added, or to pretend I didn't walk away. I just want to start right here, with whatever you're willing to give. I walked to the bookshelf, pulled out the recipe book, and slowly removed the yellow post-it. I handed it to him. He read it, eyes scanning the words he once wrote. Then he looked up. You kept it, because it was the most honest thing you gave me. He nodded slowly, folding it once, then again. I still mean every word. I walked to the couch and sat down. He followed, but didn't sit until I nodded. We sat there in silence, the kind I remembered, not empty, just full of everything we didn't have to force. He turned toward me slightly. I've stepped down, he said. I blinked. From the company? From the board? From the spotlight? I'm not walking away from my responsibilities, but I am stepping away from the version of myself that was built for appearances. I was surprised, but I didn't show it. Because of me? No, he said, because of me. But loving you made me realize I couldn't keep living in a story I didn't write. The word hung in the air between us, love. I didn't grab it, didn't return it, but I let it exist. I looked at him. You're here now, but being here once won't be enough. I know. You're going to have to show up, I said. Not with words, with presence. I will, and if you disappear again, I won't wait. I don't expect you to. We sat there, shoulder to shoulder, not touching, just breathing the same space. And for the first time in weeks, the silence didn't ache. It healed. Because he wasn't trying to fix it. He was just finally showing up inside it. And sometimes, that's how you start again. Not with answers, but with a door cracked open. A couch still warm, and a face you never stopped missing. Zarya didn't sleep that night. Even though Evander's confession had softened something inside her, the ache of everything unsaid still pulsed under her skin. The memory of his lips on hers had felt healing. But healing didn't erase history. It didn't undo the loneliness, the unanswered questions, the nights she sat awake, staring at the empty couch, wondering what she did wrong. The next morning, sunlight broke through her blinds, sharp and golden. She got up quietly and stood by her bedroom window. Down below, Evander was already there. No suit, no expensive coat, just a grey hoodie and jeans, like the man she first met under the bench. Only this time, he wasn't hiding. He was pacing slowly, looking up every few seconds. She pulled her robe tighter and went to wash her face. Part of her wanted to avoid him, but a louder part, one that missed that steady voice and those thoughtful silences, wanted answers. By the time she stepped outside, he was leaning against the hood of a borrowed sedan. Didn't think you'd come down, he said. Didn't think you'd be back again, she replied. I didn't come here to beg, he added, voice even. But I did come to explain. All of it. She didn't respond. Just nodded toward the small park nearby. They walked in silence, side by side, the way they had months ago when he insisted on helping her carry groceries. They settled on a bench under a crepe myrtle tree. I didn't lie to you, Zarya, he started. But I also didn't tell you the truth, and you deserved it. Her jaw tightened. Then say it. Evander took a slow breath. My name is Evander Cassian Reed, oldest son of Jonathan Reed, heir to Reed Enterprises. But more than that, I was broken before I ever met you. He looked down at his hands, palms resting on his thighs. When my brother died in that crash, everything shattered. He was the golden child. Everyone loved him. Even I did. I didn't just lose my sibling. I lost the shield between me and my father's expectations. Suddenly I had to be him. Perfect, polished, powerful. But I wasn't. He paused, searching her face. Zaria's eyes didn't waver. I started breaking down. Quietly. I'd sneak out at night, park in alleys, sometimes just sit in shelters, pretending to be someone else. I didn't want my name. I didn't want their grief. I didn't want to live a life that felt assigned to me. One night I didn't go back. Zaria crossed her arms. So, you just disappeared? I ran, he admitted. I didn't plan it. I left my phone, my cards, everything. I lived on the street for a few days before I passed out from dehydration. Ended up at some rundown clinic. When I got out, I kept drifting. Until that night, until you... His voice caught. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't treat me like I was less, or more. You just saw me. Zaria turned her gaze away. And yet you left. I panicked, he said. That night with you, it was the first time in months I felt like a man again, not a mistake, and it scared me. I wasn't ready to be seen that deeply. She looked back at him, hurt still swimming in her chest. You could have said goodbye, left a phone number, anything. I know. I regretted it the moment I stepped outside your door. They sat quietly. The wind rustled the leaves above them. Children played in the distance, their laughter light against the weight between them. Evander leaned forward. I came back because I couldn't forget. Not your kindness, not your eyes, not your hands, not your heart. Zaria let the words settle. The part of her that needed to protect herself flared up, warning her. But the part that remembered how it felt to fall asleep knowing someone was on the couch, safe and near. It didn't want to let go so easily. I don't need you to be perfect, she said finally. But I do need honesty. I can give you that now. She studied him. What about your family? Evander smiled faintly. I've already stepped down from the board. I still have shares, but I'm not playing their puppet games. I used some of my trust to start something new. Transitional housing for youth aging out of the system. No branding, no press. Just help. Zaria's chest softened. That's real. It's because of you. He looked at her again, blue eyes full of quiet hope. I'd like to rebuild something with you. From scratch. No pressure. Just possibility. She didn't answer right away, but she didn't walk away either. Later that week, Mela wasn't impressed. So let me get this straight, she said, stirring her tea. He vanishes, leaves you with nothing but a wrinkled hoodie and a note then. Struts back with a redemption arc and thinks he gets a second chance. Zaria sighed. It's not that simple. Mela arched an eyebrow. It's never that simple. But it should be clear. He's trying, Zaria said, and I see the effort. That's fair, but don't let effort blind you to patterns. I won't, she assured her cousin, but I also won't punish him for coming back different. Mela leaned back, thoughtful. Just promise me you'll protect your peace. I will. The next evening, Zaria opened her apartment door to find Evander, standing there again, this time, with a wooden crate full of tools. What's that for? She asked, puzzled. He grinned. You mentioned your aunt's kitchen sink has been leaking for weeks. Thought I'd lend a hand. She smiled despite herself. You're building trust through plumbing now? Hey, every empire starts with a wrench. They laughed, and she let him in. Hours passed. Between tightening pipes and laughing over their childhood stories, the tension faded. Evander wasn't just showing up, he was staying. At one point, as she handed him a wrench, their hands touched. This time, the contact didn't shake or pull away. Zaria looked at him, quieter now. You said I reminded you you're human, she said. But don't forget, I'm human too. I get scared. I build walls. I break. Evander nodded, sincere. Then let's build together. Even if we mess up. Zaria didn't respond with words. She leaned in and kissed him again, not like the first time, filled with fire. and uncertainty, but with warmth, patience, and a shared understanding. Whatever they were becoming, it was theirs to name, and this time, she didn't wake up alone. Zarya stirred awake to the sound of birdsong and the scent of something unfamiliar, cinnamon and honey. She stretched and glanced toward the kitchen. There he was, Evander, shirt slightly wrinkled, head tilted, trying to follow a pancake recipe from his phone. "You're up early," she said, voice still raspy. He turned with a sheepish grin. "I thought I'd impress you with burnt pancakes and half-warm syrup." Zarya walked toward him, slipping her arms around his waist from behind. "Well, you've impressed me with less." He chuckled. "That's not a high bar." They stood quietly in the kitchen. It wasn't glamorous. No silk sheets, no romantic playlist, just a cluttered counter and the steady warmth of bodies close enough to share space. After breakfast, which was in fact slightly burnt, they sat by the window, knees touching, sunlight pouring in. Zarya reached over, tracing a scar near his collarbone. "Where'd you get this?" Evander didn't flinch. "My brother. We were kids, racing down a hallway. I slipped into a glass door. He felt so bad, he cried harder than I did." "You talk about him like he's still here," she whispered. "He kind of is," Evander said. "Every choice I make now, I wonder what he would have done." She nodded. "I talk to my mom sometimes, not out loud, just when I'm confused." Evander met her gaze. "What would she say about me?" Zarya smiled. "She'd ask what your intentions are." He didn't pause. "To stay, to love me?" she asked softly. He leaned forward. "To earn the right to—" Those words sat between them like an offering, delicate, sincere, and unpolished. Zarya reached for his hand. "Then you're on the right path." That weekend, Evander invited her to his transitional housing site on the west end of Charlotte. The building was modest, still under renovation, a row of rooms, a communal kitchen, and a mural in progress on one outer wall. He showed her the blueprint, his voice calm but passionate. "These rooms will house teens who age out of foster care. They fall through the cracks, no money, no guidance. I want this place to feel like a restart, not a punishment." Zarya walked through one of the units. Basic but clean. A fresh coat of paint. Beds with sturdy frames. A desk by the window. She turned to him. "You're not just writing checks. You're putting in the work." Evander shrugged. "It's the first time in my life I've done something that didn't have my family name stamped across it." "You don't need it," she said. "This is enough." He looked at her. "You always made me feel like I was enough. Not the wealth, not the name, just me." They stood near the mural. Half finished, it depicted a tree with roots shaped like reaching hands and branches filled with words. Hope, trust, second chances. Zarya traced the word trust with her finger. "I still need more of this," she said. Evander nodded. "I'll give it. Every day." Later that night, they sat in her living room again, where it all began. Same couch, different energy. Evander placed a small photo album on the coffee table. It wasn't leather-bound or polished, just a plain cover, no title. "What's this?" she asked. "I went back home," he said. "Not to stay, just to get some pieces." She opened it. Photos of him and his brother. A tiny Evander in a Halloween costume. A scribbled Mother's Day card he made at 6. Newspaper clippings. Graduation shots. And one photo of him sitting by the old bus station, unshaven, hoodie drawn tight. "Why would you keep this?" she asked. He pointed to the image. "Because I want to remember who I was when you found me. I never want to forget what it feels like to be truly seen." Zarya ran her fingers across the photo. That man, he needed help. Evander looked at her, eyes clear. "And he found you." Zarya turned a page. Tucked between two photos was a handwritten letter. She pulled it out. "To the woman who changed my life," it began. Her hands trembled as she read. The words weren't flowery. They weren't poetic. They were real. A list of moments she didn't know mattered. "You didn't ask why I was on that bench, and made soup without asking what I liked. You let me borrow your peace without a contract. Zaria wiped a tear. I wanted to show you I remember. I still carry it, he said. She set the album down. I never needed your name. But I needed this, she whispered. Evander reached out. I'll keep showing up, for as long as you'll let me. This time, Zaria didn't hesitate. She nodded. 1 month later, they signed the lease on a 2-bedroom house just outside uptown Charlotte, a fixer-upper, a place to rebuild, brick by brick. Zaria kept her clinic job, 3 days a week. She still needed her work, her patience, her peace. Evander split his time between the housing site and teaching young adults financial literacy, not from a pedestal, but from experience. He often said, "Don't let wealth define you. Let purpose guide you." They lived simply. Evenings were spent cooking together, Saturday mornings in flea markets, Sundays at Aunt Morella's, who finally stopped calling him the disappearing man. One afternoon, while sorting through donations at the transitional center, Zaria came across a worn copy of Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. She held it up. Evander turned, smiled. "Keep it," he said. "It belonged to the man I used to be." Zaria placed it on the shelf of their new home, next to the photo album. Some nights, they'd read passages aloud, not because they had to, but because words mattered to both of them. A few weeks later, Zaria received a letter in the mail. No return address, just crisp handwriting. She opened it carefully. "Zaria, I judged you before I knew you. I mistook your strength for threat, your kindness for strategy. But I see now, he smiles more because of you. Thank you for reminding Evander who he is, for giving back what we in our world stripped away." Callista Reed. Zaria held the letter, unsure what to feel. Respect? Surprise? Closure? She folded it gently and placed it in a drawer. Then she stepped out onto the porch, where Evander sat reading. She crawled onto his lap, tucked her face into his neck, and let his arms wrap around her. He didn't ask what the letter said. He didn't need to. He kissed her temple. "Still here," he whispered. Zaria closed her eyes. "Me too." 3 months into their quiet new life, the peace they built started to rattle. It began with a message request on Zaria's Instagram. The profile picture was a luxury car. The username, Ain Reed Royalty Fan Page. She almost ignored it, until the message preview flashed. So this is who the Reed heir threw it all away for. Zaria's stomach turned. She opened it. A string of comments followed, screenshots of her photos, posts from her nursing job, and a few photos taken from afar. Someone had been watching. She didn't respond, just blocked and deleted. But the unease stayed with her all day. That night, she brought it up over dinner. "Someone messaged me," she said, pushing peas across her plate. "A fan account. Knew where I worked, what I looked like." Evander looked up slowly. "What did they say?" "That I ruined you. That you gave up the name for someone, like me." His jaw tightened. "You didn't ruin anything. You gave me a life." Zaria took a breath. "But they're watching. They'll keep watching." "I'll handle it," he said. "I'll talk to my stepmother, the press. I'll make it clear. This isn't scandal. It's mine." Zaria nodded, but doubt flickered in her eyes. 2 days later, the Charlotte Chronicle released a headline that splashed across every local screen. "Reed's son rebuilds, from homeless to hopeful." The article covered his transition housing project. It quoted him, spoke of grief, redemption, and philanthropy. But the last line struck hard. Rumors swirl of a mysterious woman said to have rescued the heir during his disappearance. Sources say she's a nurse from the city. No official statement has been made. Zaria stared at the screen. No name, but still enough. That evening, a news van parked outside the clinic where she worked. A reporter waited by the door. She called out, "Miss Brooks, care to comment on your relationship with Evander Reed?" Zaria didn't flinch. She walked straight past, but inside, her thoughts churned. This wasn't her world. She didn't sign up for whispers and headlines. Back home, She found Evander in the garden, trimming the basil leaves. "They're circling now," she said flatly. He looked up. "I saw. I didn't ask for this. I never wanted to be a headline." "I know." She folded her arms. "Do they even know you spent nights under a bench eating crackers and sleeping on your side so you wouldn't shiver?" Evander stepped forward. "They don't. But you do. That's what matters." Zarya hesitated. "I love you, but I don't want to become a story in someone else's mouth." He nodded slowly. "Then we write our own." A week later, Evander held a small press conference at the transitional housing project. No lavish stage. Just a podium, a few reporters, and residents sitting nearby. He spoke clearly. "I disappeared not because I lost my name, but because I lost myself." He gestured to the building behind him. "This project isn't charity, it's redemption. And it's inspired by someone who gave me soup without asking my last name." The cameras clicked. "I owe the woman I love more than public gratitude. But today, I offer truth. She's not a mystery. She's the reason I'm here." Zarya watched from behind the crowd, unseen, but her heart beat hard. When she got home that night, a bouquet sat on the steps. No roses, just her favorites, sunflowers and eucalyptus. A handwritten note read, "Let them watch. I only see you." She smiled, the tension easing. Still, whispers followed her everywhere, at the clinic, the grocery store, even church. One Sunday, a woman leaned over during service and said, "Bless your heart, child. I hope he marries you soon, before they turn on you." Zarya held her Bible tighter. The world didn't hate her, but it didn't know her either. The next challenge came from Callista. She invited them to a Reed Foundation gala. Low-key family presence, nothing dramatic, she said on the phone. Zarya wasn't convinced. "I don't belong in that room," she told Evander. "You belong wherever you choose to be," he replied. Still, when the night came, she stood in the mirror unsure. Aunt Morella zipped up her gown. Emerald green. Elegant, but not loud. "You look like yourself," Morella said. "That's what I'm afraid of," Zarya replied. "They'll see me. Let them. If they can't handle your shine, that's their darkness, not yours." At the gala, crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Men in tuxedos, women in gowns, soft jazz in the background. Zarya walked in beside Evander, chin up. Callista greeted her with a nod and said, "Thank you for coming. Let's keep things graceful." Zarya smiled back. "Always. Grace is free." They mingled. Some faces smiled politely. Others stared longer than needed. One woman said, "Did you two meet through charity work?" Zarya smiled. "No, we met through real life." When it was time for speeches, Callista took the mic. "We honor growth, we honor strength, and we honor family." She turned to Evander, "To my stepson, who reminds us that rebirth sometimes starts with ruin." Polite applause. Evander stepped up next. His speech was short. "I lost my brother. Then I lost my way. But one night, someone found me, not for who I was, but who I could become." She didn't see a Reed. She saw a man worth saving. He reached out his hand toward Zarya. The room turned. Zarya stood, calm and tall, and walked to the stage. No announcement, no title, just presence. He held her hand. She didn't speak, didn't need to. Their silence said enough. Back home that night, they stood barefoot in the kitchen eating leftover cake. Evander nudged her. "You owned that room." Zarya shook her head, grinning. "No. I endured it." He kissed her temple. "Same thing." She looked at him. "Do you ever miss it?" "The spotlight?" he asked. "No. The certainty, the safety, the legacy." Evander leaned against the counter. "I thought legacy was about towers and trust funds, but now I think it's about love that lasts longer than a headline." Zarya stepped into his arms. "Then we're building a legacy right here." He smiled. One burnt pancake and gala disaster at a time. They laughed quietly. Outside, flashbulbs may have clicked. Inside, only peace remained. The gala faded into memory. But the world didn't stop watching. A photo from that night made its way to gossip blogs. Zarya in emerald, her hand in Evander's, with the caption, "From Scrubs to Spotlight." Reevaluating's mystery woman revealed the article poked at her background. It mentioned the clinic where she worked, her neighborhood, and even found an old photo of her and her father at a community health fair. "They're treating you like a scandal," Mela said, arms crossed with the laptop open in front of them. Zarya closed it. "I'm not reading any more of those," but the whispers didn't stay online. A week later, a patient at the clinic said, "You're the one with the rich boyfriend, right? Must be nice to play nurse for fun." Zarya smiled politely, but felt her chest tighten. Her identity was being warped. She wasn't ashamed of where she came from or what she did, but now everything felt like it had to be defended. Evander noticed her shrinking. She spoke less, laughed less, and when they were alone, she hesitated before reaching for his hand, even in their own home. "Zarya," he said one night as they sat on the couch, "I didn't fight through all that to lose you to rumors." She met his eyes. "It's not the rumors, Evander. It's the weight of being seen but not understood." He nodded, understanding deeper than words could reach. "I can disappear again," he offered. "We can move somewhere quiet, start fresh." Zarya shook her head. "You shouldn't have to run from your name, and I shouldn't have to shrink from your world." Silence sat between them. Then she whispered, "I just want us to feel safe again." A week later, Zarya came home to find Evander on a video call with a familiar voice, Callista. Zarya paused in the hallway, hearing snippets. "Not everything needs to be aired," Callista said. Evander's voice was calm. "I won't let you or the board use her as leverage. She's a liability, Evander. People are talking. I know, and I'm choosing her anyway." Zarya stepped back before he noticed her. She didn't want to be overheard like a secret. She wanted to be chosen loudly. That night she brought it up. "I heard you talking to your stepmother." Evander tensed. "You weren't supposed to." "I don't want to be something you defend behind closed doors." He reached for her. "Zarya, I wasn't hiding you. I was protecting you." She pulled back gently. "There's a difference, and right now I don't know where I stand." Evander's voice cracked slightly. "You stand with me. That hasn't changed." Zarya stared into his eyes. "Then say it. In front of them. In front of your legacy. Say I'm the woman you love, and not someone you stumbled into during a crisis." He was quiet. "I've always known who you are," she continued, "but I need to know you're not ashamed of who I am." Evander looked away for a long moment, then whispered, "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I'll prove it. But I need time." Zarya nodded. "You have time, but not forever." The following weekend, Zarya returned to her mother's church alone. It had been years since she sat in that pew, but she needed clarity. As the choir sang, she thought of her father, of his calloused hands, his strong back, the way he used to kiss her forehead before night shifts at the factory. He would have told her, "The world doesn't hand out approval slips, it just watches to see if you'll flinch." She whispered a prayer through clenched fingers. "God, help me hold my head up high, even when it's heavy." Outside, Mela waited by the steps with 2 coffees. "Ready to breathe again?" she asked. Zarya smiled. "I think I'm remembering how." The turning point came with an invitation. Evander was slated to speak at the Reed Foundation's annual charity benefit, a televised event viewed nationwide. He asked Zarya to stand beside him. She hesitated. "This isn't a gala. It's national." "Are you sure?" He nodded. "I don't want you hidden anymore. Not in rooms or in my legacy." On the night of the benefit, Zarya wore a deep blue dress, simple, elegant, powerful. When they arrived at the venue, Callista greeted her with an icy smile. "I hope this goes smoothly," she said. Zarya smiled back. "It will, because truth doesn't stumble." Evander took the stage. He started by thanking the foundation, his late brother's memory, and the people who helped him recover. Then he paused. "I once thought hiding made me safe, but then I met someone who gave me safety by seeing all of me." He turned to the crowd. "She didn't know my name. She didn't ask for anything. She gave me a couch, soup, and a second chance. A photo of Zarya faded in on the giant screen behind him, her smile soft, eyes kind. She's not my charity. She's my clarity. The room went still. She is Zarya Brooks, and she is the reason I'm standing here alive and unashamed. Thunderous applause. Tears filled Zarya's eyes. Callista clapped politely, but her face fell blank. Zarya didn't flinch. She stood, walked to the stage, and wrapped her hand in his, not as a mystery, not as a shadow, but as his equal. Zarya never asked for luxury. All she wanted was honesty. Have you ever felt like love wasn't enough unless it was defended? Evander's speech shook the room, but did it heal the wound? If someone hurt you privately, would a public apology be enough? Drop your answer in the comments, yes if it's real or no, too late. And if you've ever chosen self-worth over status, hit like, share this video and subscribe. Zarya didn't expect the world to care about her love life. But when your partner is a Reed, privacy becomes a luxury. The morning after Evander's apology speech, her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. First came Morella's call. Girl, you're on Channel 9. You looked like you were about to slap that woman. I'm proud. Zarya hadn't even turned on the TV yet. Then came the texts. Co-workers, neighbors, old friends from nursing school. Zarya, was that really you at the Reed Gala? I knew you were dating someone. But the Evander Reed? Please tell me this is real. Zarya turned off her phone. She wasn't ready for the spotlight. She didn't date Evander for attention. She gave him a couch, not a platform. Later that afternoon, she walked into the clinic. All eyes were on her. Cassandra, one of the older nurses, raised a brow. Miss Fame now, huh? Zarya forced a smile. Same scrubs, same pay. The staff chuckled, but the energy had shifted. Her patients whispered too. One woman even asked, "Are you going to quit now that you're with the Reed boy?" No, Zarya said, steady. People still need care. That doesn't change. But inside, she was spinning. It wasn't the fame or the attention. It was the pressure. Every step felt watched. Every word analyzed. When she walked into the break room, a copy of the Charlotte Post was on the table. The headline read, "The Woman Who Changed Evander Reed." Her photo, snapped without her knowing, was grainy but clear. She looked tired, exposed. She grabbed the paper and tossed it into the trash. Zarya. She turned. Evander stood by the door, a bag of takeout in his hand. His eyes scanned her face. "Didn't mean to ambush your workplace," he said. "But you didn't answer my texts." Zarya stared. "What do you want me to say? That everything's fine now because you said the right words?" He stepped closer. "No, I want you to say what you need." Zarya crossed her arms. "I need time, space, normalcy." Evander nodded. "Then I'll give it. But you should know, I pulled the plug on the PR machine." She blinked. "What?" "No more interviews. No more controlled leaks." I told them, "This isn't a storyline. It's my life. Our life." Zarya's walls softened a little. "So what happens now?" He held up the takeout bag. "Lunch. Just us. No press. No politics. Just noodles." Zarya sighed, letting herself exhale the anger she'd been holding. "Fine. 10 minutes. And if anyone catches a photo, I'll dump the lo mein on your suit." Evander grinned. Fair trade. They sat on a bench outside the clinic under the shade of an oak tree. For a few moments, things felt simple again. That evening, Zarya returned home to Mela, waiting on the couch. "So," Mela said, sipping her wine, "what are we doing with the billionaire?" Zarya collapsed beside her. "We're eating noodles in parking lots and dodging paparazzi." Mela laughed. "Sounds romantic." It was. Kind of. "Do you love him?" Mela asked, serious now. Zarya looked down. "I don't know. I think I love the man he is with me, but I don't know who he is when I'm not around." "That's fair," Mela said. "Just make sure you're not the one bending all the time. Relationships are supposed to be two people leaning in, not one holding up the roof." Zarya nodded. I'm tired of being the roof. The following weekend, Evander invited her to a community event. Nothing fancy, he promised. No press, just a fundraiser for the transitional housing program I'm working on. Zarya hesitated, then agreed. When they arrived, the space was warm. Nothing like the marble coldness of the Reed estate. Local vendors, food trucks, street musicians, it felt alive. Evander introduced her as his girlfriend. No titles, no qualifiers, just Zarya. People smiled, shook her hand, thanked her for inspiring Evander's shift in direction. Later, they stood by the food truck eating empanadas. You know, she said, this is more your speed than gala ballrooms. Evander looked around. It feels like I can breathe here. Zarya smiled. Then, stay where the air is good. A child approached them, maybe 9 or 10, his shirt oversized and his shoes worn. He handed Evander a drawing. You built my bed, he said. Thanks, mister. Evander crouched down. Thank you for using it. The boy ran off. Zarya's chest tightened. You didn't tell me you already started building, she said. Evander stood, wiping his hands. Started weeks ago. Quietly, Zarya stared at him. You're not who I thought you were. I'm not who I thought I was either, he replied. Later that night, they walked through Zarya's neighborhood. No cameras, no crowds, just the buzz of street lamps and the sound of her heels clicking softly against the pavement. Evander reached for her hand. She let him. I don't want to be saved, he said. I just want to be chosen. Zarya looked at him. I'm not your charity case, she said. I know. I'm not a rehab center. I know. I'm not your escape plan. He stopped walking. Zarya. She turned to face him. I am a woman who opened her door to someone who needed help, who let herself care, who was left without answers. He didn't flinch. And I'm the man who's trying to give those answers now. Zarya stepped closer. Then start by being honest. What do you want from me? Evander's voice dropped. Everything. Your trust, your presence, your mornings and your bad moods, and the way you read in bed and hum when you're nervous. I want to build a life with you, not because I need saving, but because you make me feel whole. Zarya felt the wind shift. She didn't respond with words. She kissed him. Right there under the street lamp, in the quiet of the night, no spotlight, no applause. Just the echo of two people learning what it means to start again. By the next week, Zarya began to see pieces of Evander's world without the polish. Not the boardroom version of him, the man who set out chairs at community centers, who helped paint murals on shelter walls, who burned toast on purpose just to make her laugh. It wasn't a performance. It was consistent, quiet, real. Zarya started volunteering at his foundation's clinic 2 days a week. She took vitals, offered counseling, and scheduled follow-ups for the teens and single mothers Evander's transitional housing project served. One afternoon, as she filed patient charts, she overheard a conversation near the front desk. She's the nurse, right? Yeah, that's Evander Reed's girl. She don't act like she's rich now. She was helping Ms. Lou wash feet last week. Dang, that's love. Zarya smiled to herself and kept filing. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about being present, useful, consistent. That night, Evander found her passed out on the couch, still in scrubs. He crouched beside her, gently brushing hair from her forehead. She stirred. You still here? I'm always here now, he whispered. She smiled, groggily. You didn't even sneak out this time. Saturday brought a new surprise. Evander took Zarya on a drive. We're not going to another fundraiser, are we? She teased. Nope. We're going somewhere personal. He parked outside a small duplex with a red door and a garden struggling to grow tomatoes. Whose place is this? She asked. Ours, he said. She froze. What? I bought this when I was 19. Before the world knew my last name meant something. It was my escape. I fixed it up on weekends. Thought maybe one day I'd bring someone here, show them who I really am. Zarya's hand touched the doorknob. So, why now? Because you already saw the worst version of me, and stayed. Inside, the space was simple. Wood floors, a soft couch, bookshelves filled with worn paperbacks. No marble, no chandeliers, just comfort. Zarya walked through the rooms slowly. The bedroom had no bed yet, just a mattress on the floor and an old acoustic guitar in the corner. She sat. Evander joined her, silent. "You know this won't be easy, right?" she asked. "Your family, the media, my fears." "I know," he said. "But I'm not asking for easy. I'm asking for real." Zarya looked around. It wasn't perfect. It was peaceful. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's try real." A few days later, Evander invited her to dinner again. This time, not at a fancy estate, but at a small bistro his mother once loved. Callista was already seated when they arrived. Zarya tensed. Evander squeezed her hand. "Mother," he greeted coolly. "Evander, Zarya." Callista nodded, face unreadable. They ordered, chatted politely. Midway through dessert, Callista finally spoke with meaning. "I was wrong about you." Zarya raised an eyebrow. "About me or about love?" Callista sighed. "Both. I thought status kept people safe, that money guarded hearts. But he was miserable until he met you." Zarya didn't gloat. "I'm not here to prove anything," she said. "I just want peace." Callista nodded. "Then I hope we can find it." After dinner, Evander walked Zarya home. "You think she means it?" Zarya asked. Evander shrugged. "It's not about her meaning it. It's about us meaning it. Every step." They reached her door. Zarya turned to him. "One step at a time. One kiss at a time, too," he said, leaning in. The next month passed quietly. Zarya moved into the duplex. They planted tomatoes together, burnt dinners, argued about thermostat settings, and kissed after every silly disagreement. It felt right. One evening, while folding laundry, Zarya found something in the pocket of Evander's jacket. A tiny box. She paused, opened it. Inside was a simple gold band, no diamonds, no flair. Just a note tucked beside it, no pressure, just a promise. E. Her chest tightened. When he came home, she held up the box. "You weren't going to tell me?" He smiled sheepishly, was waiting for the right time. "I already said yes," she said. He blinked. "When?" "When I chose to stay." Evander walked over slowly, gently took the ring, and slipped it on her finger. No speeches, no crowd, just them, on their couch, in a house they were making home. Weeks later, the headlines forgot about them. New scandals took their place. Zarya and Evander stayed out of sight, but not out of love. They spent evenings in their garden, mornings at clinics, weekends fixing up homes for others. And on one particularly sunny afternoon, they stood in front of a crowd of volunteers, cutting the ribbon to a new shelter named the Second Chance House. Evander spoke first. "I once slept under a bench. I thought that was the end of my story. Then someone saw me, not for what I looked like or what my name was, but for who I was underneath." He turned to Zarya, smiling. "She gave me shelter. I built a life." Zarya stepped forward. "This isn't about saving anyone. It's about reminding people they matter. No matter what they've lost or where they've been, everyone deserves a second chance." The crowd applauded. Behind them, the shelter doors opened. A new story was beginning, for many. The shelter opening changed things. Not between Evander and Zarya, they were solid, but around them. News began to circulate again, this time more favorably. Reed Air trades skyscrapers for service. From homeless to hope dealer. Meet the woman who changed Evander Reed. The attention was warmer than before. But Zarya never liked attention. And when you grow up fighting to be seen for who you are, the last thing you want is to be defined by someone else's story. One morning, over breakfast, she looked up from her oatmeal and said, "I don't want to be a headline, or someone's inspiring girlfriend. I have my own dreams too." Evander didn't flinch. "Then let's build them. I want to open a women's health clinic." Free, community-based, fully staffed. He smiled. Say the word. I'll match whatever you raise. I don't want your money. He raised his brow. I mean, not just your money. I want you on the board. I want you present, not just supportive. Evander leaned forward. You don't need to ask. I've never been more proud of anything than standing next to you when you lead. Zarya nodded, holding back emotion. They were finally walking forward as equals. But peace always has a cost. A month later, a letter arrived at the duplex. Thick cream paper. The Reed family crest embossed on the seal. Zarya hesitated. You expecting something? Evander opened it. Read silently. His jaw tensed. What is it? She asked. He handed her the letter. Evander, you're still my son. The board is requesting your return. Your father's estate cannot sit idle. If you're serious about change, take your seat and make that change happen. Your name still means something. Callista. Zarya placed the letter down slowly. She's right, she said. I don't want to go back, he whispered. But maybe you were never meant to stay gone forever. He shook his head. If I go back, the spotlight comes with it. The expectations, the cameras, they'll drag you into it again. I'm not scared of them, she said. I'm only scared of losing what we've built. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Then let's not lose it. Let's face it. Later that week, they met with the Reed board. Zarya wore soft grey, Evander in a dark navy suit. The same boardroom he once fled now greeted him like a resurrected prince. The chairman spoke first. Evander, the estate has seen significant goodwill since your shelter announcement. We think there's an opportunity for... I'm not here to be used for press, Evander interrupted. If I come back, it's on my terms. Zarya watched as he stood straighter, firmer. The boy who once begged to disappear was now a man drawing his own boundary lines. And what are those terms? The chairman asked, dryly. 1. 10% of company profits go to building affordable housing across the southeast. 2. All new projects must pass an environmental audit. 3. My fiancée, Zarya, is head of the new Reed Foundation for Public Health. There was silence. Then murmurs. Then Callista's voice. Accepted. Zarya blinked. Evander turned to her, squeezing her hand. Welcome to the board, he whispered. Back home that night, the air was quiet. No champagne, no celebrations, just pasta, soft jazz on the speakers, warm light from the kitchen window. I didn't expect her to say yes, Zarya said. She's grown too, Evander replied. Zarya leaned her head on his shoulder. I still don't want the world. I just want moments like this. Then, we'll build a life full of them. He kissed her temple. She turned to face him. Do you ever think about that night? The first night? He chuckled. All the time. I still remember the way you looked at me, like I was the first person who didn't ask for your last name. You were, he said. They sat in silence for a while. Until Zarya said something neither of them expected. I think I'm pregnant. Evander froze. You what? I'm late. And I feel different. He rose, wide-eyed. Are you sure? No, she laughed. Not yet. I'm telling you before I even pee on a stick. He dropped to his knees, resting his head against her belly. I don't care what it says, he whispered. I already love what's inside. Zarya ran her fingers through his hair. I wanted you to know first. No matter what happens. Whatever happens, he said, we face it together. The first week back at work, Zarya moved like someone learning to breathe again. Patients still came in with aching bodies and quiet fears, but her spirit felt lighter, different. Even Mela noticed it. You still love him, Mela said while stacking books at the front desk. Zarya didn't argue. She just stared out the window, watching the sunset stretch across Charlotte's skyline like an unfinished painting. I do, she said. But love has to make sense, right? It has to stand up when everything else falls down. And maybe that's what he's trying to do now, Mela said gently. The Reed name echoed everywhere, in the news, on buildings, in real estate forums, but none of it mattered to Zarya anymore. She wasn't chasing wealth or public affection. She wanted peace, wholeness, stability. But Evander didn't disappear again. He sent flowers, not the overpriced ones, but hand-picked ones from the same corner shop Zarya used to walk past on her way to school. With each bouquet, there was no note, just small memories, her favorite color, the scent of jasmine, the tiny carved music box he once fixed for her niece. On a crisp Saturday morning, Zarya got a call from her supervisor at the clinic. "There's someone here, asking about the community volunteer program you started," the voice said. Zarya's breath caught. "Name?" "He says his name is Evander. Just Evander." She went in that afternoon, heart pounding. There he was, in jeans and a sweatshirt, rolling up sleeves beside local teens, assembling hygiene kits and folding donated clothes. "You're volunteering now?" she asked, arms crossed. Evander looked up, sweat on his brow, smile easy. "I figured if I wanted to understand the kind of woman you are, I needed to step into her world, not just admire it from a distance." She watched him work. He didn't pose for cameras, didn't announce himself. He blended in, laughing with the boys, high-fiving kids, fixing shelves with ease. Later, as they walked out together, Zarya stopped by the sidewalk. "Why are you really doing all this?" Evander turned to her. "Because I want to be the man who stays this time. No more notes, no more disappearing. You still carry weight," she said, "and I'm not asking you to lift it. Just walk beside me while I do." That night, he didn't follow her home. He respected her space, but her heart, it leaned again. Slowly, carefully. Weeks passed. They didn't jump into romance again, not like the first time, full of tension and impulse. This time, it was quiet growth, deep friendship, long talks over soup and sweet tea, short texts, checking in, shared shifts at the clinic, mutual laughter. Zarya let herself remember the good, but she also didn't forget the hurt. One evening, sitting beside Mela on the porch, she opened up fully. "He lied by omission. He walked away. He made me feel disposable." "And yet?" Mela asked. Zarya smiled faintly. "And yet he's the only one who ever made me feel seen without asking for more." Mela nodded. "Sometimes our hearts remember who felt like home before our minds catch up." Evander stayed consistent. When her car broke down, he helped fix it, without fanfare. When her nephew's school needed donations, he matched the grant anonymously. And when Zarya finally invited him in for dinner one night, he brought a worn copy of Baldwin again. "You kept it?" she asked. He opened it to the back. A sticky note was tucked inside. "This is where I stopped reading before I ran. Now I want to finish it with you." Their eyes met. That tension returned, but this time it was sacred, not reckless. Over chicken and rice, they talked about grief, legacy, love, and the future. "I want to open shelters across the South," Evander said. "Places like yours, but with resources, education, real transition programs. Not just beds." Zarya leaned back. "That's a huge shift from penthouses and press conferences." He looked at her. "You were my shift." One night, after a long shift and cold walk home, Zarya opened her door to find candles flickering. Evander stood there, apron on, stirring pasta. She blinked. "What's this?" "Dinner," he said. "And the candles?" "I YouTubed ambience," he smirked. She laughed. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" "I'm serious about you." They ate in soft silence, music humming low. Afterward, they danced in the kitchen, barefoot, slow, wrapped in the kind of safety neither of them had known for years. His hands rested on her waist. Hers found his collar. Their foreheads touched. "I was scared that night," he said. "You made me feel safe. And no one ever did that without asking for something in return. You didn't ask for safety. You needed it," she said. He brushed her cheek with the back of his hand. "I need you now. Not to fix me. Just to be near." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Their lips met, gentle, certain. It wasn't lust. It was homecoming. That weekend, Evander took her to visit one of the properties he had started renovating. An old school turned into transitional housing. He walked her through the bare halls, showing where beds would go, where therapy offices would sit, where the rooftop garden would be planted. "I'm naming this one after my brother," he said, "but the library. I was thinking of naming it after you." Zarya blinked. "Why me?" "Because love gave me a reason to return to purpose, and your name deserves to stand where healing begins." She turned away, eyes moist. He stepped closer. No pressure, no spotlight, just permission. She nodded. "Then, yes. Let them read under my name." By winter, things weren't perfect, but they were solid. They traveled once, to Asheville for the mountain air. They visited shelters in Atlanta. They took walks without paparazzi. They became a unit, and one snowy evening, Evander handed her a small envelope. No ring, no pressure. Inside, a key. "To my home, the one I bought with both of us in mind. No security gates, just a porch, a garden, and space for your clinic dreams." Zarya looked at him, stunned. "I don't want to buy your love. I want to build a life with it." She smiled. "Let's start with dinner in that kitchen." The new place sat on a quiet street in the outskirts of Charlotte. Nothing extravagant. A white fence, a porch swing, a garden Zarya had already begun to shape with herbs and peonies. It was the kind of house where you heard birds in the morning and neighbors greeted each other by name. Evander called it peace. Zarya called it healing. They didn't rush anything. They took turns making breakfast, folded laundry together, sat on the floor watching reruns and documentaries about social reform. Their days weren't perfect, but they were honest. One Tuesday morning, Zarya stepped out to water the garden when a sleek silver car pulled up. She paused, gripping the hose. Callista Reed stepped out in her usual armor, cashmere coat, flawless makeup, eyes that scanned like searchlights. Zarya didn't flinch. "Mrs. Reed," she said calmly. Callista forced a smile. "Zarya, you've moved up in the world. I haven't moved. I've grown. There's a difference." Callista looked around, unimpressed. "This is where you live. With him, we live here." Together, a beat passed. Then Callista sighed, stepping closer. "Evander won't say this, but we're finalizing the public side of his return. Investors, media, legacy. I'd like you to consider stepping back. For his sake." Zarya blinked. "Excuse me? You're a good woman, I can see that. But the media already has a story about a homeless episode, a disappearance, a scandal. We don't need a nurse with an opinion stirring things further." Zarya didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "You sent your stepson out into the world unprepared. He found someone who saw him, not his last name. You don't get to rewrite that." Callista's mask cracked. Slightly. "I see," she said quietly. "I hoped you'd be reasonable." Zarya stepped forward. "I gave him a couch, soup and silence when the world didn't care if he existed. If I'm not qualified to stand beside him now, then maybe none of you ever were." Callista didn't reply. She walked back to her car without another word. Zarya stood firm, heart racing but calm. Evander had once said he'd walk away from it all to be seen for who he was. Now it was Zarya's turn to remind him who he could become, on his own terms. Later that evening, Zarya didn't mention the visit. Not out of fear, but focus. Evander was cooking. Again, he hummed off key, his hair messy, his shirt half tucked. She loved him like that, human and grounded. "Busy day?" he asked. Callista stopped by, she said simply. His hands froze over the chopping board. "What?" "She asked me to walk away, said I'd be bad for your public return." Evander dropped the knife, jaw tight. "She didn't." "She did." He turned toward her. "Zarya, I'll shut the entire board down if they try to put that pressure on you." She stepped closer. "You won't need to. I already handled it." His face softened. She doesn't know me. But I know you. And if you're going back into that world, you'll do it with truth beside you. Not another illusion. He kissed her forehead. I don't deserve you. Zarya smiled. Love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. The next week, a news headline popped up. Reed returns and brings heart with him. The article covered Evander's new housing project, his community work, and his re-entry into the boardroom. But the last paragraph made Zarya pause. Reed's partner, Charlotte native and healthcare worker Zarya Wynn, is reportedly a co-director in the outreach initiative. Together, they aim to build healing that lasts. He hadn't warned her, but he had named her. The spotlight burned a little, but Zarya had lived through far worse than flashing cameras and curated headlines. She stood beside him at the ribbon cutting of their first housing center. They didn't hold hands. They didn't kiss for the press. But their glance, the quiet understanding between them, was louder than any speech. Afterward, under a tent outside the center, Zarya leaned toward him. You're doing it, she said. He smiled. No, we are. That night, they celebrated with Mela and a few friends. No suits, no speeches. Just fried chicken, music and laughter echoing through their modest home. You've got a good man, Mela said, sipping wine. Zarya nodded. I've got a man who wants to be good. That's better. Later, as the night wore down, Evander stood behind Zarya in the kitchen, arms around her waist. I have something, he said softly. She turned. What? He held up a key. Not to another house, he said. To the land next door. I want to build a health clinic in your name. You said you always wanted one in the neighborhood. Zarya blinked, stunned. Evander. I don't want this life to just be about redemption. I want it to be about creation. She reached up and kissed him, slow, sure, full of the kind of promise words couldn't carry. One morning, a letter arrived. Callista. Zarya opened it slowly, unsure what to expect. I judged you quickly, harshly, perhaps out of fear, but my stepson smiles again. Genuinely. He laughs, he builds, he stays, and I know now it's because he has you. Thank you. Zarya folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Forgiveness didn't always mean reconciliation, but growth. That was always welcome. Weeks passed and fall rolled in. The garden's peonies faded, replaced with mums and marigolds. The leaves turned and the neighborhood slowed down, softer somehow. Like the whole street breathed differently. Zarya adjusted to it all, but something stirred inside her. A quiet hum she couldn't ignore. She'd grown used to fixing things. The leaky faucet, the wrong order at the pharmacy, the misunderstandings between patients and doctors. But peace? That was new. And sometimes peace could feel like standing still. One afternoon, while Evander painted the nursery walls at their new outreach center, Zarya stepped into her old clinic for a quick drop-in. It had been months. Nurse Tanya blinked. Girl, you still remember us? Zarya laughed. I'm not famous, just redirected. Tanya smiled, glancing at Zarya's hands. No ring? Nope. No timeline. Just love. Zarya answered easily. You always were different, Tanya said. Good different. Zarya nodded, soaking it in. She missed this. Not the chaos, but the purpose. The knowing she was needed, not for show, but for something that mattered. As she walked through the halls, she noticed a teen girl in the waiting area. Shoulders hunched, hoodie up. Zarya paused. The girl glanced up, dark eyes rimmed with smudged liner. You okay? Zarya asked. The girl shrugged. It's whatever. You here for you or someone else? Me. You hungry? The girl blinked. Zarya sat down beside her and pulled out a protein bar. It's not gourmet, but it'll help. The girl took it. Slowly. Like trust didn't come easy. Thanks, she murmured. Zarya smiled. You got a name? Jay. I'm Zarya. Cool name. You got one too? A beat passed. Then Jay cracked a small smile. That was Zarya's cue. She left the girl in peace, but stopped by the front desk before leaving. Put her under the outreach watch. If she needs rides, food, checkups, we'll cover it. Quietly. The receptionist nodded, eyes soft. Zarya walked out, the air cooler now, and she finally understood. She didn't miss the clinic. She missed being available, being present. Evander gave her love, but this gave her breath. That night, Evander noticed the difference. "You're quiet," he said, pulling her close on the couch. "I went back to the clinic." He didn't stiffen. He didn't panic. "Do you want to go back full time?" he asked. Zarya thought for a moment. "No," she said. "I want to split my days. The clinic 2 days, the center 3. I need both." Evander nodded. "Then we'll make it work. No guilt, no possessiveness, no man trying to own her time. Just support." Weeks later, while organizing boxes for the transitional housing wing, Evander found an old hoodie, familiar, worn, still carrying the faint scent of Zarya's detergent from months ago. He smiled. He remembered that first night, how broken he felt, how he barely made eye contact, and how she didn't try to fix him, she just saw him. He walked into the kitchen, holding it up. "Remember this?" he asked. Zarya gasped, laughing. "You still have that thing? It saved my life." "No," she corrected gently. "You saved your life. I just gave you a couch." Evander set the hoodie down and stepped closer. "You gave me a home, Zarya." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. She kissed him, with full weight, no holding back. The kind of kiss that felt like a promise that kept on giving. One weekend, Evander's father, Silas Reed, requested a private meeting. It was the first time since his return that Evander agreed. Zarya didn't object, but she watched closely. Silas was tall, commanding, and less cold than Callista, but there was still an edge. "I see you've settled," Silas said, eyes on Evander. "I'm becoming myself," Evander replied. "And the woman?" "She's not the woman, she's Zarya, and she's not temporary." Silas nodded once. "You've made some headlines. Better than disappearing." Silas studied him. "You're building homes, clinics, giving speeches." Evander leaned forward. "And not for the press, I know. That's why I came." Silas reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. "I added you back, to the board, to the trust, no conditions." Evander blinked. "Why?" "Because you're not the same man who left. And I respect that." Then he stood. "Also, she reminds me of your mother." Evander's heart paused. Silas nodded again and left. Evander turned toward Zarya, who waited by the door. "He said you remind him of my mom." "I'll take that as a compliment," she said. "Me too." Later that month, Zarya woke up to Evander scribbling something in a notebook at the kitchen counter. "What are you writing?" she asked, hair messy, eyes half closed. He turned the notebook around. A blueprint sketch of a mobile clinic van, fully equipped, GPS integrated, staffed with young nurses from underserved communities. "You dreamed this up?" she asked. "No. I've been watching you." Zarya walked over, slid her arms around his waist. "You know what I love most about you?" she asked. "My charm?" "No," she said with a laugh. "You listen, and you care enough to act." Evander pulled her into his lap. "We're building something here, Z. Something big, but slow, like roots." She kissed him again, deeply. "Let's never stop growing," she whispered. "We won't." That evening, they sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. Fall wind brushed their faces. The stars dotted the sky. Evander turned to her. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked. "The night you were sleeping under a bench?" "No, the night I left." Zarya nodded. "Sometimes I didn't want to. I just didn't know how to stay without falling apart. And now I know falling apart isn't the end. It's how you begin again, with the right person." Zarya rested her head on his shoulder. They said nothing for a while. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a tiny velvet box. She didn't look shocked, just curious. "I'm not proposing," he said. "Not yet." "Okay." He opened the box. Inside, a necklace, a tiny charm shaped like a couch. Zarya laughed. Deeply. You're kidding. That couch saved me. It held me before I knew I wanted to be held. She wore it instantly. No ring, no pressure, just memory and meaning. They sat there side by side, two souls who found peace not in perfection, but in persistence. And that made all the difference. The first cold snap came early. Frost kissed the windows. Morning breath hung visible in the air. Zarya pulled her coat tighter as she stepped onto the porch, a thermos of hot tea in hand. Inside, Evander was prepping for a live interview. A small non-profit magazine had picked up the story of their transitional housing work. No big networks, no PR handlers, just real people asking real questions. Zarya liked that. He'd come a long way, from hiding under benches to answering questions under lights. She sipped her tea, listening through the open window as Evander rehearsed, with Mela, who'd become his unofficial public speaking coach. If they ask about your past, what do you say? Mela asked. I tell the truth, he replied calmly. I was grieving, lost, and I ran, but running led me here. Zarya smiled. Growth wasn't loud. It was steady. But the day wasn't done handing out surprises. By noon, Zarya's phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. Zarya speaking, she answered. The voice on the other end was clipped. Polished, female. This is Lila Stanton. I work with Callista Reed. Zarya paused. Okay. We're reaching out because Callista has requested a meeting. Private. No press. Just you and her. Zarya's eyebrows lifted. Why? She said she wants to correct a mistake. Zarya didn't respond immediately. She'll be at the Langham Cafe at 3 p.m. If you choose not to come, she'll understand. But she hopes you will. The line clicked dead. Zarya stared at her phone, unsure what to make of it. When she told Evander, he didn't try to sway her. She probably wants to apologize her way, he said. Zarya exhaled. I don't need anything from her. You don't. But maybe it's not about what you need. Maybe it's about what you deserve to hear. That landed. At 3 p.m. sharp, Zarya walked into the Langham Cafe, calm, confident, in a burnt orange coat and boots that clicked. Callista sat in the back booth, a teacup untouched before her. She stood when Zarya approached. Thank you for coming. I didn't say yes for you, Zarya replied, sliding into the booth. Callista nodded once. You're different in person than on magazine covers, Zarya said. And you're as sharp as they say. I'm not interested in sparring. Good, Callista said. I'm tired of that too. A beat passed. Callista folded her hands, then began. When I first met you, I saw a threat, not because of your background, but because of what you represented. Change. And change terrifies legacy families like mine. Zarya stayed quiet. But I watched Evander. Over the months, I saw him come alive again, the way he used to be before. She paused. Before his brother died. Zarya finished softly. Callista looked up. You know about Ellis? Evander had shared it all weeks ago. The accident, the pressure, the quiet grief no one addressed. I do, Zarya said. Callista breathed in, then out. I blamed Evander, silently. For living while Ellis didn't. For disappearing when we needed unity. I never said it, but I carried it. And now, I realize I failed both sons. One through pressure, one through pride. Zarya's throat tightened. Not because she forgave, but because she understood. I came here today, Callista continued, to ask nothing from you. Not friendship, not approval. Just grace, and maybe, one day, if there's a family gathering, you won't walk out. Zarya took a long sip of her tea. The heat grounded her. I'm not here to fix your family, she said. But I won't run from what's mine either. Callista blinked. You're his mother, Zarya said plainly. But I'm his home. The older woman didn't argue. Instead, she smiled. Small, honest. Then thank you. For giving him what we couldn't. They stood. No hug, no false closeness. Just two women, one letting go, the other standing firm. When Zarya returned home, Evander was in the backyard, raking leaves with Mela. "How did it go?" he asked, sweat on his brow. "She's human," Zarya said. "For once." Evander chuckled. "Progress." They spent the evening quietly, watching old documentaries and folding laundry. It was the kind of domestic peace Zarya never knew she needed. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. But it was real. Around 10 p.m., Zarya got up to shower. When she came back to the living room, Evander was asleep, blanket over his lap, the remote dangling from his hand. She smiled, leaned down, and kissed his forehead, then froze. On the table beside him sat a sealed white envelope with her name on it. Handwritten. No stamps. No smudges. Curious, she picked it up. Inside, 2 pages. The first was a note in Evander's handwriting. "Zarya, if you're reading this, it's not because I'm leaving again. It's because I'm finally staying. I've had this letter ready for months, just in case. But tonight, I want you to read it while I'm still here." Confused but intrigued, she unfolded the second page. It was a list, a timeline of every moment he remembered, from the night under the bench to their first real laugh, their fight outside the Reed estate, the necklace, the night they danced in socks in the kitchen. Next to each memory was a line that started with, "I knew I loved you when." Zarya's hands trembled. The last line read, "I knew I loved you when I realized I didn't fear being seen by you. I craved it." She swallowed a lump in her throat and turned toward the couch. Evander was awake now, watching her. "You weren't supposed to read it with mascara on," he teased. She blinked through tears. "I can't believe you wrote that," she whispered. "I had to, because love should be recorded, not assumed." Zarya set the letter down and crawled into his arms. "This time," she said, voice thick, "don't ever vanish." "I won't," he promised. "Even if the world falls apart, I'll still be here, with you." They held each other under the low light of the living room, surrounded by quiet love. Tomorrow could bring anything. But tonight, they were unshakable. Spring came early that year. Tulips bloomed along the garden fence, and the breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass. The small 2-bedroom home that once echoed with solitude now buzzed with purpose. Love, work, and new beginnings. Zarya had returned to part-time shifts at the clinic, pouring compassion into every patient. Her name was whispered with respect among colleagues, but her biggest healing work? It happened at home. Evander's project, transitional housing for displaced youth, was no longer a dream. It was brick and mortar. His first complex opened that April. A 12-unit building with solar panels, a communal kitchen, and free therapy services. They called it the Bench House. Every unit bore a number etched into the door. But Unit 01? Its plaque read, "Zarya's Gift." On opening day, local press showed up, not because of the Reed name, but because of the cause. Evander stood beside Zarya in front of a ribbon, surrounded by youth who now had keys in hand. "I was once lost in this city," he said during his speech, "not because I lacked money, but because I lacked meaning. Someone gave me shelter, soup, and a name again. This house is my way of passing that forward." The crowd applauded. But Zarya, she just watched him. That same night, they lay in bed, limbs tangled, laughter lingering after sharing memories of their worst first dates with others. "I once had a date take me to a hot wing challenge and then disappear to the bathroom for 40 minutes, Zarya giggled. Evander smirked. "I once got dumped during a musical intermission because she said I clapped off beat." They laughed until tears slipped from the corners of their eyes. Eventually he turned to her, tracing circles on her arm. "Do you think we could build something bigger?" he asked. Zarya tilted her head. "Like another bench house?" "No, like a family." The air stilled. Zarya sat up slightly, blinking. Evander's eyes held no pressure, only hope. "I'm not saying tomorrow or next month, but I think about it. A little hand in mine, a baby with your eyes, and maybe my loud laugh." Zarya exhaled slowly. Her fingers tightened around his. I was abandoned once, she said. My father. When I was 6, Evander listened, silent, so I promised myself I'd never give anyone the power to leave again. Until you... A pause. I thought you'd hurt me. That night you left, I thought I was foolish for letting someone in again. Evander's throat worked, but he let her speak. But you came back, and every day since you stayed. That healed more than you know. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. So yes, she whispered, we can build that. When we're ready. Weeks passed. Their days became filled with quiet routines, morning walks, shared grocery runs, and reading Baldwin aloud on lazy Sundays. Mela had unofficially adopted Evander into her heart. She even knitted him a scarf for his birthday, though she pretended it was leftover yarn. He wore it everywhere. Callista visited once, alone, unannounced. She brought a box, Ellis's journals. Evander opened it in silence. After she left, he turned the pages with trembling fingers. Zarya sat beside him, holding his hand through the past. This is where I come from, he said, voice raw. Not all of it, she replied. Where you are now. That's who you chose to become. That summer, Evander proposed. No ring, no fanfare, just 2 cups of tea on the porch. He looked over at her and said, I want to wake up beside you forever. Will you marry me? Zarya smiled, eyes crinkling. Yes, she said. They married in a park by the river, where the wind played with her veil, and Mela wept openly during the vows. Evander wore a grey suit and a nervous grin. Zarya wore a dress made by a local designer she once helped when he couldn't afford his medication. They invited 50 people, but it felt like the whole city showed up. One of the boys from the bench house handed them the rings. Zarya whispered to him, Thank you for reminding me what hope looks like. He whispered back, You gave us that. Their honeymoon was simple. A cabin in the Smoky Mountains. No cell service. No schedules. Just firewood, soup, and slow kisses. Zarya read by the fireplace, while Evander doodled house designs on napkins. One night, it rained so hard they lost power. They danced by flashlight. It was the best week of their lives. Months later, Zarya stood in front of a classroom full of young nurses. She'd been invited to guest lecture on community health and patient empathy. Her last words to them were, Sometimes healing isn't found in pills or protocols. Sometimes it starts with a question, Are you okay? And meaning it. The room fell silent. Then, applause. Afterward, she stepped outside, and there he was, Evander, waiting with lunch in hand and 2 cups of mango smoothie. Your fan club's getting louder, he teased. Zarya laughed. Just don't forget who saw you first, he added, kissing her cheek. I never will. One evening, they took a walk by the river. Evander held her hand tighter than usual. She looked up. You okay? He nodded. I just keep thinking about the bench. Zarya squeezed his hand. That night changed everything. I was a ghost, he said. But you saw me. She stopped walking. You weren't a ghost. You were a man. Tired, broken, but still good. He kissed her then. Slow. Full. And for a moment, the world hushed. There were no headlines. No family names. Just 2 people, exactly where they were meant to be. A new plaque now hangs in the clinic's waiting area. Donated in honor of the night a stranger became family. Below it is a photo. Zarya and Evander holding hands, standing in front of the bench house, surrounded by kids who now had roofs over their heads. Mela visits every Sunday. She brings peach cobbler and stories. Callista writes letters now, not out of guilt, but understanding. And in the small nursery next to their bedroom, there's a crib, white, hand-carved, ready, because love didn't end under the bench, it just began there. Have you ever met someone who changed your life in the most unexpected way? Tell us in the comments. If this story touched you, hit the like button, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more powerful life stories every week. Thank you for watching Mr. Charles' Stories. where every story teaches, touches, and transforms.